Hey guys, tonight we walk right up to the edge of the world, where the sea looks like dark glass and the air feels so clean it could rinse your thoughts. The horizon is a slow, patient line. Above it, the sky is deep blue velvet with a few stubborn stars hanging on, like they forgot they were supposed to go to bed. The wind is quiet in that polite, whispery way, more suggestion than shove, and every breath you take tastes faintly of salt and snow, like the ocean is offering you a tiny, chilled mint. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're still awake enough to type, drop your location and your local time in the comments. It's strangely cozy to imagine this same cold shoreline meeting you in different time zones. Some of you listening at 2:11 a.m. with one sock missing. Some of you catching this at sunset, pretending you're just resting your eyes. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing on a wide, snowy beach that doesn't crunch so much as sigh under your weight. It's not the loud, dramatic snow from movies. It's the quiet kind, powdery, soft, almost shy. Somewhere behind you, ice cliffs hold their breath. Somewhere out there, the ocean moves in slow, black swells, and the waterline shines like a thin ribbon of metal. Then you see them. At first it's just shapes, little upright commas against the pale ground. A cluster of tiny silhouettes at the edge of the tide, as if someone spilled a handful of formal wear onto the snow. You blink once, and your eyes finally decide to cooperate. Penguins. Real ones. Not cartoon mascots with detachable eyebrows. Actual birds standing there like they own the shoreline, like they scheduled the moonrise and invited the waves as background music. The first thing that hits you is how calm they look. Even when they're doing something ridiculous, like walking with that famous waddle, they radiate an unbothered confidence. They don't hustle. They don't rush. They don't check their phones. They're basically the opposite of your inbox. A penguin near the front leans forward, peers at the water, and then pauses, perfectly still, like it's listening for the ocean's mood. Another steps closer, then stops too, and for a moment the whole group feels like a silent committee, voting on whether the sea is acceptable today. One of them shakes its head in a quick little shiver, and you realize the wind is wearing a colder coat than you are. You move a little closer, slowly, because this place feels sacred in a way that makes quick movements seem rude. You keep your steps soft and your curiosity softer. The penguins glance toward you. Not alarmed, just aware. They look like they're politely acknowledging your presence. The way a seasoned barista acknowledges a customer who clearly doesn't know what to do with a menu that says single origin. Their bodies are smooth and rounded, built like small torpedoes that decided to take a break from being aerodynamic. Their feathers look like velvet from far away, but up close they're so neatly arranged that the penguin seems almost groomed by a professional. The blackbacks soak up the night like ink, while the pale fronts catch the moonlight and glow softly like candle wax. You can see why people call them tuxedo birds, but that nickname almost undersells it. They look dressed for a quiet gala no one told you about. You let your attention settle on a simple, soothing truth. Penguins are birds, but they've chosen a life where the sky is optional and the sea is home. They stand upright on land like little dignitaries, and the moment they reach water, something in their posture changes, like they remember who they really are. Even watching from shore, you can feel it in the way they hover at the edge, waiting for the right timing, the right wave, the right cue from the dark. One penguin takes the plunge, sliding forward and vanishing into the water with barely a splash. Another follows, then another. Their entries are so smooth, it's almost comical, like they've been practicing minimal drama for thousands of years. And for a second, you catch the faintest sound, little breathy exhalations, tiny squeaks, a soft chatter that doesn't interrupt the quiet so much as blend into it, like wind chimes made of snowflakes. You keep watching, and the more you watch, the more they become less like animals you observe and more like a rhythm you can join. The ocean inhales, the ocean exhales, Penguins appear at the surface like punctuation marks, then slip back under as if they're diving into a dream. It's easy to forget, in your normal life, that there are places where nature isn't performing for you. It's simply doing what it does. Penguins aren't trying to be adorable. They just are. The cute part is accidental, like a serious person wearing socks with tiny frogs on them. You didn't ask for the frogs. The frogs showed up anyway. A few penguins remain on the beach, and you notice their feet, short, sturdy, and planted with the determined stance of someone waiting for a bus that may or may not exist. Those feet look like they belong on a completely different animal, almost too small for their bodies, but they work. Everything about a penguin is purposeful. Their shape is a gentle compromise between warmth, movement, and the kind of efficiency that feels almost soothing to think about. No wasted lines. No frantic gestures. Just clean design, like nature hired a minimalist architect. You take another breath. The air is cold enough to make your nose feel awake, but your brain starts to relax anyway, because there's something comforting about a world that doesn't demand anything from you. You don't have to solve anything here. You don't have to be impressive. You could just stand and watch. Out on a low ridge of ice, a penguin stands alone like a tiny guard statue. It faces the wind, and the wind doesn't win. That bird is steady, balanced, quiet. It seems to be holding the night in place. For a moment, you picture a whole planet that keeps spinning simply because penguins keep standing like stubborn little anchors. You remember, vaguely, that there aren't just one or two kinds of penguins. There are many, more than most people casually realize. If you try to picture them all, your mind would start assembling a parade. Some big and regal, some small and quick, some living in bitter cold, some choosing milder coasts. Penguins aren't locked to one single frozen postcard. They're scattered across the southern hemisphere like secret notes. There's even a penguin that lives near the equator on the Galapagos Islands, which feels like nature's sense of humor. A penguin in a place where people wear sandals and complain about heat. Of course, because penguins didn't ask your expectations for permission. The group on the beach shuffles, and a penguin bumps another with its shoulder, gentle, almost absent-minded, like a sleepy nudge in a crowded elevator. Nobody gets offended. Nobody starts a dramatic argument. It's all so civilized. There's a softness in their social energy, even when they're clustered together. Their bodies are close, but their vibe is unhurried. A wave slides in, and the wet sand darkens. Moonlight stretches across it like a thin sheet. A penguin steps into the shallows and stands there, letting the water rise around its ankles. It looks down at its own feet like it's checking the temperature, then lifts its head and stares out at the open sea. You can almost feel the decision forming. Not rushed, not anxious, just a calm internal yes. You start noticing little details that make the scene feel real in a way that documentaries sometimes miss. The way their heads tilt when they look at something. The slight wobble when they adjust their stance on uneven snow. The way their bodies seem wrapped tight, like every feather is in the right place, keeping the cold out and the warmth in. And the way their eyes catch the light. Dark, glossy, and alert like tiny polished stones. One penguin shakes out its feathers with a quick, practiced shimmy. A few drops of water flick away, catching the moonlight like glitter. You don't have to think too hard to appreciate it. Your brain likes simple, satisfying motions, and that shake, fast, clean, done, is one of them. If relaxation had a sound effect, it might be that small, soft rattle of droplets leaving a feathered coat. On land, their bodies look round. In water, you can already sense the hidden sleekness, like a sports car under a cozy cover. That contrast is part of their quiet magic. Formal and clumsy on the surface, precise and graceful where it matters. And you don't even have to watch them swim to understand that they belong out there in the dark water, moving through it like a thought slipping through your mind and out the other side. You feel your shoulders loosen. Your jaw unclenches. Your attention, which usually skitters around like a nervous insect, starts to settle in one place. The penguins are teaching you something without trying. It's okay to be slow. It's okay to pause at the edge and listen. It's okay to stand still and let the world decide its own pace. A penguin near you opens its beak and makes a sound that's surprisingly blunt. Not the delicate chirp you'd expect from a cute bird. It's more like a small, raspy comment. It sounds like it has opinions about the wind, and it's not shy about sharing them. You smile, the kind of smile that happens quietly inside your face, and you realize you've been holding your breath the way people do when they're trying to control everything. You let it go. The shoreline feels endless, but the penguins make it feel intimate. They're small figures in a huge landscape, and somehow that doesn't make them fragile. It makes them monumental, like tiny living proof that even the harshest places can be inhabited by something warm and determined and quietly elegant. You stay with them a little longer, watching the ocean's slow pulse. The stars fade slightly as clouds drift through and the moonlight softens. The penguins keep their gentle watch, stepping forward, stepping back, balancing between land and sea with the patience of creatures who have been doing this forever. And in that calm repetition, you find a kind of permission to stop performing, stop striving, stop carrying the day like it's a heavy bag. The cold air brushes your cheeks. The penguins remain steady, their tuxedo shapes moving like quiet punctuation against the snow. Somewhere out there, beneath the dark surface, the world opens into a silent universe you can't see yet. You don't need to rush to it. Just knowing it's there is enough, like a secret room in a familiar house. And you hold your place at the shoreline, listening to the gentle, unhurried life of penguins, feeling your thoughts slow down to match them. The penguins don't seem to mind that you're still standing there, quietly soaking up the night like it's a warm drink. One of them takes a few deliberate steps, pauses, and looks at you with an expression that says, very gently, "You're late," even though you were never invited. Their calm has a strange effect. Your brain stops sprinting and starts strolling, which is exactly when a curious thought slips in. How did a bird end up like this, dressed for a formal event on a beach made of snow, choosing the ocean over the sky? You let the question sit in your hands the way you'd hold a smooth pebble, turning it slowly. The shoreline feels ancient, and in the quiet it's easy to imagine time as something you can lean on. Somewhere far behind this moment, the southern world rearranged itself. Continents drifting like patient rafts, oceans opening, coastlines changing their minds. And somewhere in that deep past, there were birds who didn't look like these tidy tuxedo guests at all, but who carried the first sketch of what a penguin could become. Evolution, when you're tired, is strangely comforting to think about. It isn't a dramatic reinvention. It's slow revision. Nature tries something, keeps what works, lets the rest fade out. Penguins are what happens when what works is water and the sky becomes optional. You picture an older coast that isn't frozen, something milder, maybe green at the edges. Early penguin relatives would have looked more like typical seabirds, still capable of lifting off and gliding, wings built for air. But the sea kept offering a better deal. Food that moved in shimmering schools, long distances you could travel without burning yourself out, safety, and slipping under the surface. Over generations, the strongest swimmers gained tiny advantages, and tiny advantages have a way of stacking up until they become destiny. The trade was simple: less sky, more sea. If you watch a penguin lean toward the water, you can almost feel how complete that choice became. Their wings aren't wings in the usual sense. They're flippers, stiff, strong, shaped to push water the way oars push a boat. The flexible structure that helps a bird ride the air gave way to a compact tool built for resistance and power. Even their bones shifted toward being denser and heavier, which is the opposite of what flying birds want, but perfect for diving. Instead of fighting to stay afloat, a penguin can slip downward with intent, as if the ocean has opened a quiet door. A penguin surfaces offshore and exhales a small burst of breath that somehow carries an entire family tree behind it. You think about fossils, stone proof that penguins have been here for a very long time, long enough to have had eras when some species were much taller than the ones you usually imagine. The idea sounds like a joke your brain wants to tell. Giant penguins in giant tuxedos, stomping around like bouncers at a fancy club. But the truth is calmer. Ancient seas once held penguins built on a grander scale, shaped by a world that looked different, yet guided by the same underwater logic. The penguins on your beach don't try to impress you. They don't need to. Their shape is the result of endless ocean homework. Rounded bodies that waste less energy in cold. Short tails that help steer. Legs set far back for efficient swimming, which is why walking turns into that famous waddle. Less clumsy, more I'm optimized for something else. You can respect that. Most people are also optimized for something else and still forced to attend meetings on land. The tuxedo colors have their own quiet practicality. Dark back, light belly, counter shading. From above, a darker back blends with the deep water. From below, a pale belly blends with brighter surface light. It's like wearing two outfits at once, depending on who's looking at you. Except the audience includes hungry animals with sharp eyes and no interest in your personal growth journey. Moonlight turns their fronts softly silver, and you imagine that same light underwater, scattered into a gentle ceiling. A pale belly becomes a calm disguise. A dark back becomes a shadow, and the penguin becomes hard to read, which is exactly what you want when the ocean is full of things that have teeth as a personality trait. One penguin near the edge pauses again, head tilted, as if listening to the sea's tone. Penguins live by subtle cues, wave patterns, wind shifts, the timing of swell. Watching them makes you notice subtler things too. The pace of your own breathing, the way cold settles into your hands, the way your thoughts, when you stop grabbing them, start floating past more gently. When that penguin finally commits, the change is immediate and almost elegant. The upright stance dissolves, the body angles forward, and it slips into the water as if it belongs there more than it belongs on land. Under the surface, you sense the hidden speed, flippers beating in smooth strokes, the body streamlined, steering with feet and tail. It's underwater flight, the logic of wings translated into a place where wings shouldn't work, and it works, so you start wondering if the sky was ever the main event. Your mind drifts outward to the southern hemisphere, to the invisible highways of ocean currents. Penguins aren't placed randomly. They follow cold flows that deliver nutrients and life, moving food through the sea like a slow conveyor belt. Their world is land for resting and nesting, water for living, and a whole lot of unseen motion in between. They are birds shaped by the ocean's rhythm, quiet, relentless, and surprisingly precise. And standing here beside them, with the wind speaking softly and the waves breathing in the dark, you feel their ancient story settle into you. Not as trivia, not as a lecture, but as a steady, soothing thought. These aren't birds that failed to fly. These are birds that chose a different kind of sky, one made of water, and became magnificent at it. That thought sits in your chest, birds that chose water. And it makes the whole scene feel even quieter, like the beach is holding a secret and trusting you not to shout it. You watch the dark water swallow and release penguins in smooth loops, and then your attention slides back to the ones still on land, because there's something about their surface that looks too perfect to be real. Up close, a penguin's coat doesn't look like feathers the way you picture feathers. Not long, fluttery plumes that float away in cartoons. This is a tailored suit made of thousands of tiny, disciplined pieces, packed so tightly together that the bird seems wrapped in soft armor. If you've ever owned a winter jacket that promised to be insulated but still let cold sneak in through the seams, you can feel a petty jealousy rising. Penguins have been solving warmth with ruthless efficiency for a long time, and they did not consult your shopping budget. You lean in a little, just enough to notice the texture without invading anyone's personal space. And the first detail that hits you is how smooth the surface looks. The feathers are short, overlapping, and so evenly laid that you don't see gaps. You see continuity, like shingles on a roof, like scales but softer, It's the kind of design that makes wind give up and wander off to bother someone else. A penguin turns, and the coat catches moonlight in a subtle sheen, not shiny like plastic, but glossy like velvet that's been brushed the right way. The black side drinks light. The white side reflects it gently. And the whole thing looks simple. 2 colors, neat edges. But the simplicity is a trick. The real miracle is the layering. Penguin feathers are built for cold the way a good bed is built for sleep. Multiple levels of comfort doing different jobs at once. There's the outer layer that faces the wind and water, and beneath that, a deeper layer that holds warmth close to the skin. You can imagine it like a 2-part promise. The outside says, no thanks, to the ocean. The inside says, come here to heat. Even the way feathers sit matters. They overlap in a pattern that reduces exposed skin to basically zero. Every feather covers the edge of the next one, and the next one, and the next one, until the penguin is wrapped in a continuous blanket with no obvious place for cold air to sneak through. The ocean can be brutal about taking warmth. Penguins reply with a coat that refuses to negotiate. The quiet genius is air. Air is what you're chasing when you pile on blankets at home. Not the fabric itself, but the pockets of air trapped between layers. Penguins trap air on purpose, holding it close like a private stash of warmth. Their feathers are arranged in a way that keeps tiny spaces filled with air, and that air slows down heat loss, like a calm bouncer at a nightclub telling cold molecules, sorry, you're not on the list. You notice a penguin do a small, practiced shake, quick and tidy, and the coat settles back into place perfectly, as if the feathers have magnets. That motion isn't random. It's maintenance. Penguins spend time keeping their feathers aligned because alignment is survival. A misaligned section is a draft. A draft is discomfort. In the wrong conditions, discomfort turns into danger. Penguins don't have time for sloppy craftsmanship. Another penguin lifts its beak and runs it through its feathers with slow precision. It looks like grooming, like a self-care routine, like someone carefully combing their hair before bed. It's also engineering. That beak is a tool, zipping feathers together, smoothing the surface, resetting the structure. When you watch it for more than a few seconds, it stops being cute and starts being hypnotic. The repetitive motion, the patience, the tiny adjustments, the way the penguin seems completely absorbed in the task, like it's meditating with its own coat. A feather isn't just a single piece. It's a structure with branches and hooks and fine details that lock together, creating a continuous surface. On most birds, that structure is partly about flight, keeping air moving over wings in useful ways. On a penguin, the priorities are different. The feathers are small, stiff, and numerous, more like tiles than streamers. They sit in dense rows, creating a thick barrier against water and wind. The outside becomes sleek, the inside becomes plush. You can almost feel the warmth trapped underneath without even touching. A penguin stands there in air that would make your ears sting, looking calm, like it's wearing a personal climate system. Under that coat, skin stays warmer than you'd expect. Not hot, not tropical, but protected. Steady. The kind of warmth that doesn't show off, because it doesn't have to. And it's not just about cold air. Cold water is worse. Water pulls heat away from a body far faster than air does, and penguins spend a lot of time in water. So their coat has to do something bold. It has to keep them warm while they swim through an environment that wants to drain them like a battery. Feathers help by creating that insulating air layer and by forming a surface that resists soaking. A wet feather coat would collapse and the trapped air would vanish. Penguins don't allow that. Their coat is designed to stay functional where other birds would struggle. You watch one penguin return from the sea. It hauls itself up, water dripping, and for a moment you see the difference between wet and protected. Water beads and runs off. The surface sheds it quickly, like the coat is politely refusing to hold onto anything extra. The penguin gives another short shake, and the droplets fling away in a scatter of moonlit sparks. A few seconds later, it looks almost dry again, as if the ocean barely happened. That's the illusion their feathers create. You see water, but the penguin doesn't wear it. It doesn't carry the cold around like a souvenir. It drops it and moves on. Somewhere beneath the neat outer surface, there's also softness, downy insulation close to the skin, the part that holds on to heat like a secret. Penguins are basically wrapped in a plush lining under a sleek shell. If you could see the cross-section of it, you'd understand why they look so compact and smooth. They're not puffy birds. They're efficiently layered birds. Your mind wanders to the idea of changing clothes because humans are helplessly fascinated by outfits, and penguins are out here wearing the same formal suit year-round like they're committed to a brand identity. But their coat isn't static. It has to be renewed. Feathers wear out. Salt, ice, friction, constant movement through water, everything breaks down over time. Penguins handle that with something both inconvenient and kind of relatable. They replace their feathers. There's a season when many penguins go through a molt, shedding old feathers and growing new ones, trading an old coat for a fresh one. During that time, they can't rely on the usual sleek, waterproof surface. Swimming becomes a problem because the feather structure isn't fully locked in. So they often stay ashore, living off stored energy, waiting for the suit to finish tailoring itself. It's the most penguin thing imaginable, pausing your whole ocean lifestyle because your outfit is mid-upgrade. If you've ever avoided going out because your laundry wasn't done, you're basically experiencing a miniature version of penguin logic. Except their laundry is a full-body rebuild. The coat is also part of how they move. When a penguin swims, the feathers lie in a smooth direction that reduces drag. The surface becomes streamlined, and the water flows over it cleanly. The same coat that keeps them warm also helps them slice through the sea. Warmth and speed aren't separate features. They're bundled together in one design, like a phone that's somehow both thin and durable, except this one doesn't crack the first time you drop it. A penguin stands near you and looks out at the water again, calm and composed, and you realize the coat is doing emotional work too. It gives the bird confidence. It lets it face a harsh world without hesitation. When you feel protected, you act protected. When you're warm, you can afford to be patient. Penguins don't panic at the shoreline because they're prepared for what comes next. Their body is already dressed for it, already equipped for the cold, already wrapped in an answer. Your own body, meanwhile, starts to mimic the calm you're seeing. You breathe slower. Your shoulders soften. The beach feels less like an extreme environment and more like a quiet room that happens to have snow in it. The penguins keep moving with gentle certainty, their coats holding warmth like a lullaby stitched into feathers, and the whole scene turns into something you can rest inside. Simple, smooth, steady, the kind of comfort that doesn't ask for attention, but keeps you safe anyway. The more you watch that feathered suit hold its shape against cold and spray, the more you start noticing the smaller, quieter strategies stacked underneath it. Like the coat is only the first layer of a whole comfort system. Penguins don't survive by having one good trick. They survive by having a dozen small ones that all whisper the same message. Conserve, conserve, conserve. A penguin near the waterline shifts its weight from one foot to the other, a tiny rocking motion that looks almost lazy, almost bored. You realize it's not boredom. It's management. The ground is cold enough to steal warmth just by existing. And those little feet, cute, stubby, unfairly confident, are one of the only parts of the penguin that regularly touch ice and snow. If heat were money, feet would be where the budget leaks. So penguins treat their feet like a controlled expense. They're built with a kind of internal heat recycling that feels like nature quietly showing off. Warm blood traveling down toward the feet runs close beside colder blood returning upward. The warmth transfers across before it ever reaches the toes, so by the time blood gets down there, it's already cooled a bit, still alive, still functional, just not wastefully warm. And on the way back up, that returning blood picks up heat again. It's a closed-loop exchange, a gentle handoff, like two trains passing on parallel tracks and quietly swapping passengers, so neither has to carry the full load alone. It sounds technical when you say it out loud, but watching in real life feels almost poetic. The penguin stands there, feet on ice, and doesn't look distressed. No frantic hopping, no dramatic suffering. Just a steady little stance like, yes, I am standing on frozen ground, and yes, I planned for this. You catch another foot trick when a penguin settles down slightly, lowering its belly and leaning into its own warmth. It isn't sitting exactly, more like resting the body closer to the ground to reduce the surface area exposed to wind. Another tucks one foot up for a moment, balancing on the other, then switches. Like a slow dance no one asked for, except the laws of thermodynamics. The whole move is so casual you almost miss it, and that's the point. The best survival tricks don't look dramatic. They look like a habit. Then there's the wind. Wind is cold with ambition. Still air can be tolerated. Wind comes with a plan to rummage through every crack and seam and take what it can. Penguins respond by becoming smaller targets. They angle their bodies slightly away, feathers flattened into a smoother surface. That tuxedo suit you admired is not just warm. It's aerodynamic against the wind, too. Clean lines, no flapping edges, nothing for the air to grab. A penguin lifts its head and the beak points into the breeze, and you notice how often the face is the only part truly exposed. Even the head can tuck down toward the chest when needed, reducing the amount of skin meeting the air. It's a posture that looks like humility, but it's more like strategy. Like someone pulling their hoodie tighter, except this hoodie is a living animal with ocean credentials. You watch a penguin preen again, beak moving through feathers with slow, methodical focus, and you start to understand that preening isn't vanity. It's waterproofing, maintenance, reinforcement. Somewhere near the base of the tail is a gland that produces oil, and the penguin distributes it with that same patient grooming motion. The oil spreads across the feathers, making the surface more water-resistant, helping maintain that air-trapping insulation you were just appreciating. Without that oil, the coat would soak, the insulating air would collapse, and the cold would arrive like a bill you forgot you owed. The oil itself has a smell if you're close enough, subtle, not pleasant or unpleasant, just animal and sea. It's a reminder that this calm elegance has a real physical cost. Penguins work at staying warm. They do it constantly, quietly, with routines that look almost like rituals. One penguin steps out of the water and stands there as droplets slide away in thin streams. It gives that quick shake again, and you can see how the oil and feather structure cooperate. Water refuses to settle. It beads, it runs, it leaves. The penguin doesn't carry wetness because wetness is cold's best friend. There's a kind of cleanliness to it, an efficiency that makes your own life feel messy by comparison. You can't even keep your kitchen counter dry. Beneath all of this, there's something else, something you can't see but can almost sense in the way their bodies look solid and composed. Penguins have a layer of fat that helps with insulation too. It's not glamorous, but it's effective. Warmth stored under the skin, an extra buffer against a world that wants to drain you. It's the kind of biological practicality that makes you want to stop apologizing for wanting to be comfortable. A penguin near you makes a soft sound, half a grunt, half a comment, and shuffles closer to another. Not quite touching, but near enough that their bodies start to share a little warmth. You can feel the next big trick approaching before it happens. Penguins don't only rely on individual engineering, they rely on each other. In harsher conditions, especially in places where winter doesn't play nice, they huddle. Not a cute group photo huddle, but a living, moving wall of bodies designed to trap heat and block wind. It's communal insulation. It's the softest form of architecture. Bodies as bricks, warmth as mortar. You imagine a storm pushing in, the kind that turns the world white and loud. In that weather, a single penguin standing alone becomes a tiny heat source exposed to relentless theft. But a group, dozens, hundreds, sometimes far more, becomes something else entirely. The outer layer takes the wind, the inner layer takes the warmth, and the whole structure breathes together. Huddling has its own quiet fairness. It isn't one penguin suffering on the outside forever while the others enjoy the cozy center like villains in a blanket fort. The group shifts. Penguins rotate positions over time, trading places so everyone spends time sheltered and time exposed. It's one of those rare systems where the natural outcome is cooperation that actually looks like cooperation. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the logic. Your turn to be warm, my turn to take the wind, then we swap. No speech is required. No motivational posters. Just a shared understanding that surviving the cold is easier when you do it together. The image is strangely soothing. A living circle of penguins, pressed close, breathing steam into the air, a quiet engine of warmth on an ice plain. The kind of scene that makes you feel less alone, even if you're nowhere near Antarctica. The kind of scene that makes you think about your own life. How warmth isn't always a thing you find. Sometimes it's a thing you make by showing up near other living beings and letting the distance close. Back on this beach, the conditions are gentler than that imagined storm, but the instincts are still visible. Penguins keep closer than they need to. They stand in ways that minimize exposure. They choose positions that reduce wind. They do small movements that preserve heat. They're always negotiating with the environment, but it never looks like panic. It looks like calm habit. A pair stands shoulder to shoulder, both facing the same direction, like they're watching the ocean together. Their bodies form a tiny windbreak for each other. It's so understated you might mistake it for coincidence. But the way they align, so neat, so deliberate, suggests a shared wisdom. They're not cuddling for romance. They're leaning into physics. You notice something else about how they stand? Their flippers rest close to their sides most of the time. Holding them out would expose more surface area and lose heat faster. Keeping them tucked reduces loss. It makes their silhouette tighter, more compact, more resistant to the cold. They aren't expressive with big wing gestures. They're expressive with subtle head tilts and small steps. Efficient even in body language. And it keeps stacking coat, oil, fat, posture, blood flow, group behavior, layer upon layer of calm solutions that don't scream for attention. You can sense why they look so composed. That composure is built. It's engineered. It's the result of a body that knows its environment and has answers ready. The ocean breathes again, and a few penguins slip into the water without ceremony. A few remain, maintaining their quiet readiness on land. You stand among them, feeling the cold with your own unprotected human hardware, and you can't help admiring how little drama they bring to a place that could easily be dramatic. They don't conquer the cold. They cooperate with it. They manage it with routines, with design, with community. Your thoughts slow further, almost matching the pace of their movements. There's something comforting in knowing that even in the harshest climates, life doesn't always survive by fighting harder. Sometimes it survives by being smarter, closer, quieter, by sharing heat, by sealing seams, by turning a simple shake of the feathers into a kind of promise. You're safe, you're warm enough, you can keep going. The beach keeps its quiet rules: slow wind, slow waves, slow thoughts. But your attention keeps getting pulled back to the water, to the place where penguins stop looking like little formal guests and start looking like they were designed by the ocean itself. A few dark shapes surface offshore, breathe, and slide under again. It feels less like swimming and more like a secret rhythm you're only allowed to witness if you stand still long enough. One penguin at the edge does that familiar pause, the tiny committee moment, then tips forward and disappears into the black. The water barely reacts. No flailing, no dramatic splash, no "help I'm a bird" energy. Just a smooth entry and a clean vanishing, like it stepped through a door that only it can see. The surface is calm enough that you can almost imagine what happens beneath it. Not as a hard, documentary-style image with narration shouting facts at you, but as a soft, underwater dream. The world below is blue-black and velvety, the kind of darkness that isn't scary because it's so full of quiet. Moonlight filters down in faint ribbons. Tiny particles drift like slow snow. The ocean is colder than your hands could tolerate for long, but the penguin doesn't tense up. It becomes sleek. On land, you've been watching that waddling gait and those compact bodies. Underwater, the whole silhouette changes into something clean and purposeful. The flippers press outward, stiff and strong, and then they move in a smooth stroke that looks like flying, because it is just in a heavier sky. The motion is steady, not frantic. Push glide, push glide. The body stays streamlined, the head pointing forward like a calm arrow. It's the kind of movement that makes your own muscles feel clumsy by comparison, like you're wearing 3 coats and carrying a backpack full of regrets. You can almost feel the water around them, thick and supportive, making every motion slower and more controlled. A penguin doesn't fight the ocean the way you would. It works with it, carving through it, letting momentum do half the job. Between strokes, there's a glide that looks like rest. The ocean holds them up. The ocean carries them forward. They don't rush because they don't have to. A shape darts past under the surface, one penguin chasing another, or maybe just moving quickly because it can, and for a moment the water seems to light up with tiny bubbles trailing behind. Those bubbles aren't chaos. They're almost decorative, like the penguin is drawing a line through the sea. The trail catches what little light exists down there, and you get a glimpse of speed without noise, a kind of silent acceleration. You've seen birds in the air, how they flap and coast, flap and coast. This is that same pattern translated into water, except water gives you less forgiveness and more resistance, and penguins still make it look effortless. Their flippers beat in a way that resembles wings, but stronger, more compact, built for power. The stroke doesn't wobble. It doesn't flutter. It's clean and decisive, like a metronome that learned how to hunt. And then there's steering. Penguins don't just power forward like a torpedo. They turn with grace, shifting their body angle, using their feet as rudders, tail and legs helping with fine control. They can bank, roll, curve through the water as if the ocean has invisible pathways, and they know every one of them. Watching that kind of control does something soothing to your brain. It's satisfying in the same way as watching a skilled dancer. The movement is deliberate enough that you can predict it, surprising enough that you stay curious. Up on the surface, you notice the penguins popping in and out of the sea with a certain rhythm. Sometimes they leap, arc briefly into the air, and slice back in. It's quick, little punctuation marks of motion against the dark water. From far away, it looks playful, like they're showing off for the moon. Underneath, there's a practical grace to it too. Moving fast through water costs energy. Breaking the surface for a moment can be a quick reset, a tiny breath, a way to keep momentum without constantly fighting resistance. Even they're cute. Moments come with efficiency tucked inside. You imagine following one penguin underwater like a quiet companion, not chasing, just drifting alongside, matching that slow glide. The ocean down, there's a different kind of silence than the beach. The wind disappears. The air disappears. Sound becomes muffled, softened, distant. Everything is slower, heavier, calmer. It's the kind of silence your mind craves after too many hours of bright screens and sharp noises. The penguin passes through a patch where the water turns slightly lighter, maybe shallower, maybe touched by a strip of moonlight, and you can see the body more clearly. The back is dark, blending into the depths above. The belly is pale, blending into the brighter surface light above. That tuxedo look you admired on land becomes camouflage in motion. It isn't fashion, it's a trick. A very classy trick, sure, but still a trick. You can't help smiling a little at the thought that penguins are basically wearing stealth formal wear. Somewhere out there, a predator looks up and sees brightness, looks down and sees darkness, and the penguin slips through the middle like a quiet rumor. It's elegant in a way that feels almost unfair. Humans put on expensive gear to swim in cold water and still look like panicked seals. Penguins just exist, and they're already built for it. The seabed below is indistinct, sometimes visible as a shadowy slope, sometimes swallowed by darkness. Every so often, a glint appears, tiny fish scales catching light, or a flicker of movement that suggests life is everywhere, even when you can't fully see it. The penguin seems to know where to go without hesitation. It doesn't look lost. It doesn't look indecisive. It looks like it belongs to this three-dimensional world where up and down are negotiable. You notice how the penguin's head stays steady as it moves, eyes forward, alert but not frantic. Underwater vision matters here. Water bends light differently than air, and everything can look closer, larger, stranger. But penguins are adapted to this watery optics, able to track quick movement in a dim world. Their eyes look like polished stones on land. Underwater, you imagine them as quiet searchlights, reading the sea's subtle shifts. A small school of fish moves like a single organism, turning in unison, and the penguin angles its body with the tiniest adjustment. It doesn't need to overcorrect. It doesn't throw itself around. It just leans, curves, closes the distance. The flippers beat a little faster, then the penguin glides again. There's a calm economy to it, like it knows exactly how much effort to spend. The chase, if it happens, is fast and clean. No messy thrashing, no chows, just a quick dart, a snap, and then a return to smooth motion. The sea doesn't explode into drama. It barely notices. The penguin doesn't celebrate. It doesn't pose. It simply continues because this is what it does, because hunger is practical, because life is a steady rhythm of going out and coming back. Even the act of swimming itself seems to soothe the penguin the way a long walk can soothe you. There's something meditative about repeating a strong, controlled motion through a silent environment. Stroke, glide. Stroke, glide. The body stays warm with movement. The mind, if penguins have anything like a mind you can imagine, stays focused in the simplest way. Forward, forward, forward. You picture the penguin rising again, approaching the surface from below. The water above looks like a shimmering ceiling, faintly textured by waves, and the penguin aims for a spot where light is softer. With one last push, it breaks through and exhales. A small burst of breath hangs in the cold air like a tiny cloud, then vanishes. The penguin floats for a moment, just a dark head and a hint of back, before slipping under again. From the shore, you see only pieces of this underwater ballet. A quick leap, a ripple, a distant dot moving in a line. But your brain fills in a rest because it wants to imagine that weightless glide, that calm flight through blue darkness. It wants to borrow that feeling of moving smoothly through a quiet world, leaving your noise behind on the beach like shoes at the door. A penguin closer to you launches into the water, and for a split second, you catch the arc of its body, the sleek curve that hints at everything happening below. It's a reminder that the beach is only their waiting room. The ocean is their real home, and watching them slip between the two worlds so easily makes the boundary feel softer, less strict. Land and sea aren't opposites here. They're just different rooms in the same house. The longer you stand there, the more your imagination syncs with their pace. Your thoughts stop snapping from one thing to another and start flowing, like the current under a calm surface. Penguins don't need you to understand every detail to feel their mastery. The feeling comes through anyway. The quiet magnificence of a creature built for a place you can't comfortably inhabit, moving through it with such smooth certainty that it looks like peace. And as the penguins continue their silent underwater flight just beyond your reach, the ocean starts to feel less like darkness and more like a deep, soft corridor, one they travel through without fear, as if the cold water itself is only another kind of sky, and they are exactly where they're meant to be. You keep watching those clean arcs, penguins breaking the surface, slipping back under, and your brain starts craving the part you can't see. The part where the ocean stops being a mirror and becomes a whole hidden sky, where pressure increases with every meter and the cold grows more serious. Penguins don't just swim there. They commit to it calmly, like they've signed a lease. One surfaces not far out, breathes once, maybe twice, and disappears again with that same tidy confidence. And you realize how strange this is. If you tried that, You'd get about 3 seconds into the dive before your body started sending dramatic emails to your brain. Urgent, all caps. Subject line, air. Penguins, on the other hand, look like they're politely reducing their speed and lowering the volume of their internal systems, like someone dimming lights in a living room. The deeper they go, the more the ocean presses in. Water doesn't do personal space. It stacks weight on you the way blankets stack warmth. Except this blanket is heavy and indifferent. Your instinct says the deeper you go, the harder everything gets. Penguins respond by getting calmer. You can almost feel it happening. The moment the penguin dives, there's a switch. Heartbeat slows, not in a scary way, more like a deliberate, practiced slowing, as if the body is saying, we're going to be under for a bit, so let's not spend oxygen like it's free shipping. That slower heartbeat is one of the quiet marvels of diving animals. It's the opposite of panic. It's a controlled economy. Think about that for a second. When you're stressed, your heart speeds up, your breath gets shallow, your body burns through energy like it's trying to escape itself. Penguins do the reverse. They go into the deep and settle down. There's a soft elegance to that idea, the way a penguin turns a dive into a kind of biological meditation. The oxygen it has is precious, so it spends it carefully. It doesn't need to pump blood fast if it can pump blood smart. Muscles are doing the hard work, keep getting what they need, while other parts of the body can wait politely. It's not dramatic. It's just prioritization, which is something you've probably been told to do 1,000 times, but rarely with this much success. If you imagine the penguin under the surface again, you can picture the glide between strokes, that weightless pause that looks like rest. That glide isn't just beautiful. It's economical. Every moment it coasts, it saves oxygen. Every smooth movement reduces waste. The penguin isn't thrashing, it's budgeting. Some penguins go deep enough that your mind almost refuses to picture it. Emperor penguins, the big, regal ones, can dive hundreds of meters down into a darkness that feels like it belongs to another planet. The numbers are almost rude. You're out here proud of yourself for holding your breath while brushing your teeth, and an emperor penguin is dropping into the ocean like a calm stone with a tuxedo. The deeper the dive, the more important the internal storage becomes. Penguins don't just rely on the air in their lungs. They store oxygen in their blood and in their muscles. Their muscles are rich with a protein called myoglobin, which holds onto oxygen like a patient friend who refuses to let go until you really need it. It's like carrying extra batteries, except the batteries are built into the muscle itself, quiet and efficient. No charging cable required. That means a penguin isn't simply holding its breath the way you do. It's drawing from reserves. It's using a system designed for long, controlled under time. And while you're imagining it, your own breathing slows a little, because something about this feels reassuring. A creature can go into a place that would crush your urgency, and instead of panicking, it becomes more measured. Under pressure, air spaces compress. That's basic physics, and physics is famously not sentimental. But penguins have adaptations that make that compression less of a problem. They can manage the air in their bodies in ways that reduce risk, and their lungs and air sacs are part of a system built for diving. As they go deeper, the air volume shrinks, and that can help limit issues that would bother other animals. The point isn't that penguins ignore pressure. It's that their bodies are prepared to meet it without turning it into a crisis. And then there's temperature. Cold water wants to steal heat fast. You already saw how the coat, the oil, the tuck posture, the clever blood flow help them on land. Underwater, the same logic continues, but everything gets more intense. The ocean is like a strict auditor. Any weakness gets noticed. Penguins meet it with layers of calm engineering. Insulation, circulation control, and movement that generates heat without wasting it. The most soothing part, though, is the heart. You can't hear it from the shore, but your mind can still imagine it. A steady heart that deliberately slows when the penguin dives. This diving response shows up in many breath-holding animals, but penguins wear it like a tailored suit. The heart rate drops, conserving oxygen, and blood flow can be directed more toward the organs that absolutely must keep running smoothly. It's an internal dimmer switch. It's hard not to feel a little jealous. Your own heart sometimes speeds up because you remembered something embarrassing from 2017. A penguin's heart slows down because it's heading into deep water with pressure and predators and cold. And it's like, okay, let's be efficient. That's the sort of emotional maturity you can only aspire to. When the penguin is chasing food, it can still move fast. The heart and circulation can adjust as needed. But the baseline is calm. It's not burning through oxygen just to feel busy. That calm makes long dives possible, and long dives open a world of food sources that other animals might not reach as easily. It's not only survival, it's access. Penguins have access to a quieter pantry. You can picture the descent, the penguin angling down, flippers beating in controlled strokes, then gliding. The light fades. The water turns darker, thicker. The pressure increases. Somewhere below, fish and squid drift through a blue-black corridor. The penguin's movements stay clean, and the body keeps doing its calm math. How much oxygen remains, how much effort to spend, how to return to the surface without hurry. That math is what makes the whole thing feel grand instead of chaotic. The ocean is vast, and the penguin is small, but it behaves like it belongs. It behaves like it knows the ocean's rules and has built its life around them. Not with force, with finesse. And when the penguin finally rises, it doesn't explode upward like a desperate swimmer. It comes back with control. It surfaces, exhales, inhales, and resets like it's checking in with the air for a moment before returning to the sea. The breath itself is a small, visible thing in the cold, steam against night, gone in seconds. The penguin doesn't gasp like it survived something terrifying. It breathes like it's completed a routine. You start noticing how the surface becomes a kind of gentle boundary for them. Up here is air, quick access, a pause. Down there's work, quiet, pressure, the slow, drifting snow of particles. Penguins move between these worlds like they're crossing from one room to another, and their bodies are tuned to keep everything steady through the transition. Even fatigue is handled with calm logic. Penguins can tolerate the buildup of lactic acid in their muscles during intense activity, and they can recover when they return to the surface or rest. They're not endlessly power machines, but they're well-adapted athletes, and that athleticism doesn't look like strain. It looks like smooth technique, like they've learned the ocean's language and stopped wasting words. Standing here, you feel the story of it settle over you like a blanket, feathers, oil, huddles, and now this deeper layer. The slow heart, the oxygen reserves, the quiet internal choices that make the impossible look easy. It's not just that penguins can dive. It's that they can dive without turning the act into panic. And that's the part your tired mind loves most, because it suggests a different way to move through pressure, a way to meet heaviness with steadiness, to spend your resources slowly, to glide when you can, stroke when you must, and trust that the surface will still be there when it's time to breathe again. That steady rhythm of diving and breathing keeps looping in your mind, and it starts to feel familiar, like the ocean is teaching you a slower way to live. The penguins slip up for air, slip down for silence, and each return looks unbothered, almost sleepy in its confidence. You notice it in the way one penguin lingers at the surface a beat longer than the others, floating like a small dark comma on the water, then paddling back toward land with no urgency at all. When it reaches the beach, it doesn't shake itself into a frantic reset. It does the same tidy feather shake you've come to expect. Water beads fling away, the coat settles back into place, and then it simply stands. Upright, still. The wind touches its face and moves on, and you realize something soothing and slightly ridiculous. Penguins look like they could fall asleep at any moment, as if the world's harshness is just background noise they've learned to ignore. You watch a cluster of them gather a little higher on the snow, away from the edge where waves lick and retreat. The group isn't loud. It doesn't have the restless energy of animals that fear the dark. It feels more like a quiet crowd outside a theater after the show has ended. Everyone lingering in the cold because leaving would break the mood. A few penguins tuck their heads down toward their chests, beaks disappearing into the soft front feathers like they're hiding their faces under a blanket. That single motion changes everything. The posture becomes smaller, rounder, more sealed. It's the penguin version of pulling the covers up to your chin and deciding the world can deal with itself for a while. And then you catch the first real sign of sleep. Micro-sleep, the kind that doesn't announce itself with snoring or dramatic collapsing. A penguin's eyes close for a moment, then open. Another closes one eye slightly longer than the other, like it's testing the idea of rest without fully trusting it. The colony's stillness is full of these tiny off switches. Sleep here isn't a big event. It's not a formal bedtime routine with lavender tea and a playlist called Deep Ocean Calm. It's more like sipping rest in small, frequent tastes, because life in a penguin colony has interruptions built into it. Wind shifts, neighbors shuffle, distant calls ripple through the group. A shadow passes. The ocean coughs foam onto the shore. Even in calm conditions, the environment is always doing something, and penguins adapt by making their rest flexible. You feel your own mind soften as you watch them do it. The way your brain usually tries to finish the day in one dramatic crash starts to loosen. Penguins don't insist on perfect sleep conditions. They take what's available. They doze standing up. They nap in tiny fragments. They rest in the middle of noise because the noise is just part of being alive here. A penguin near you sways slightly, not in a sick way, but in a my body is still awake, but my thoughts are already under the feathers way. It's standing, yet its posture says it's halfway elsewhere. The feet remain planted. The flippers hang close to its sides. The head stays tucked. If you didn't know better, you'd think it was just posing for a brochure titled Cold Weather Confidence. Then it blinks slowly, once, twice, and the blink itself feels like a yawn. Standing sleep is one of those facts that sounds like a party trick until you see it. Penguins can rest upright because their bodies are built for stability. Their center of gravity is low, their stance is wide enough, and their muscles and tendons know how to hold them without constant conscious effort. It's like they've learned how to lock into place with minimal energy, turning the act of standing into a quiet form of stillness. And if you watch long enough, you start noticing how the colony breathes as a whole. Not literal breathing, though you can see faint puffs of vapor when someone exhales, but a communal rhythm of micro-movements. One penguin shifts, two others adjust, a few step closer. Another tucks its head deeper. It's like a slow tide made of bodies, and inside that tide, sleep happens in pulses. Some of them nap with their heads turned back, beak tucked under wing or into the shoulder feathers, giving the neck a supported angle that looks impossibly comfortable for something happening outdoors on snow. It's the kind of posture that makes you want to try it, right up until you remember you don't have a full-body feather suit and a lifetime of practice. A soft sound rises from somewhere within the group. Low, brief, not a full call, more like a sleepy complaint. The gentle sarcasm in your brain translates it as, could everyone stop being so alive? The colony doesn't react much. A few heads lift, a few eyes open. Then the stillness returns like a blanket settling after you toss once. You think about how different their sleep must be depending on what they're doing in life. When penguins are out at sea, the ocean itself can be a kind of moving bed, but it's also a place that demands awareness. When they're on land, especially in colonies, there's safety in numbers, but also constant little disturbances. Rest becomes something penguins weave into the day and night rather than something they schedule neatly. And here's where the story gets strangely mesmerizing. Some penguins have been observed taking tiny naps that last only seconds, little flickers of sleep. Over and over again, sometimes thousands of times across a day, especially during periods when they're stuck in one place and can't fully relax. It's not the long, luxurious sleep of a lazy weekend morning. It's a survival version of sleep, broken into tiny beads, each one just enough to keep the brain from running out of fuel. You can almost see it happening from the outside. The eyelids lower. The body remains steady. The head stays tucked. A few seconds pass, barely enough time for a dream to form. And then the eyes open again. The penguin is back, alert, present. Then, later, another tiny drift. Another quick reset. It makes you wonder what a dream looks like when it lasts 4 seconds. Maybe it's not a dream at all, not in the way you imagine. Maybe it's just the brain smoothing itself, wiping a foggy mirror, restoring quiet. Maybe it's the nervous system taking a sip of calm. Birds, in general, have a fascinating relationship with sleep. Many can rest with one eye open, literally, keeping a thread of awareness while part of the brain slips into sleep. Penguins carry some of that same seabird practicality, resting without fully surrendering, sleeping in a way that keeps them connected to what's happening around them. When you're tired, it's oddly reassuring. There are ways to rest that aren't all or nothing. There are ways to soften without disappearing. A penguin on the edge of the group lifts its head suddenly, eyes sharp for a moment, scanning the darkness. Nothing happens. No threat appears. The penguin waits, then slowly tucks back down and closes its eyes again like it just checked the locks on the door. That quick vigilance, then return to stillness, is the colony's heartbeat. Awareness and rest trading places, smoothly, without drama. You notice how the cold doesn't seem to keep them awake the way it might keep you awake. In your world, a cold room means fidgeting, trying to find a warm spot, bargaining with your blanket. Penguins have insulation, yes, but they also have habits that support rest. Tucking the head reduces heat loss. Keeping the body compact helps. Standing close to others helps even more, not necessarily in a full storm huddle, but in a casual, cozy proximity that steals the wind's confidence. A few penguins press side by side, their bodies forming a small wall, and you can see how the ones in the middle relax more deeply. Their shoulders, if you can call them shoulders, sink slightly. Their eyelids droop heavier. It's subtle, but it's there. Warmth invites sleep. Protection invites sleep. Being near others who are steady invites sleep. You realize the colony is full of tiny sound cues that signal safety. The soft shuffling of feet, the faint scratch of feathers, occasional low calls that are more like reassurance than communication. Even the ocean's rhythm becomes a kind of lullaby. Nothing in this environment is quiet in a sterile way. It's quiet in a living way, and that kind of quiet makes room for rest. One penguin's head slips deeper into its feathers, and for a moment it looks like a small black and white stone, perfectly polished, perched on 2 feet. The simplicity of the shape is calming. No wild gestures, no wastilmotion, just a compact form resting in the cold, like it has learned the secret of being still without feeling trapped. If you stay with the scene long enough, you start to feel your own body copying it. Your shoulders drop, your breathing stretches out, your jaw unclenches. You stop trying to solve sleep and start letting it happen in the same way penguins do, piece by piece, moment by moment. And there's something quietly grand about that, something almost mythic in its simplicity. Here are these birds, descendants of ancient seabirds that traded sky for sea, standing at the edge of the world. They dive deep with slow hearts and careful oxygen. They return with the ocean's silence still clinging to them. Then they tuck their heads down and take small, steady rests right on the snow, as if comfort isn't a luxury reserved for warm rooms, but a skill you can practice anywhere. A penguin near you opens its eyes and looks directly in your direction for a beat, not startled, not curious in a frantic way, just aware. Then the eyelids lower again in a slow blink that feels like an invitation. Calm down. You don't have to be fully awake to be safe. You don't have to hold everything at once. The colony continues its gentle, living stillness. Some penguins remain alert, some doze, some drift in those tiny fragments of rest that add up over time like gentle snowflakes settling. And you stand there, letting the cold air clear your thoughts, letting the penguin's patient approach to sleep rub off on you, feeling the night become softer around the edges as if the world itself is learning to whisper. The colony's quiet doesn't break when those little naps end. It just rearranges itself. A few heads lift from feathered chests. A few eyes blink open like slow shutters. Someone shuffles 2 steps and stops again, as if movement is a rumor they're not sure they believe. And in that soft waking, you notice something that feels less like survival and more like story. Penguins aren't only built for cold and depth and silence. They're built for finding, because in a crowd of blackbacks and pale bellies, in a place where the wind steals scent and the landscape can look like the same white page over and over, they still manage to locate what matters. Not vaguely, not eventually. They find it with the kind of certainty that makes you wonder if the universe is more organized than it appears. A penguin steps away from a small cluster and heads toward another group farther up the beach. It moves with that familiar waddle, serious, steady, slightly offended by gravity. It pauses, lifts its head, and scans. You expect confusion. You expect a wrong turn. Instead, it picks a line and keeps going like it has a destination pinned inside its chest. In the middle of all these nearly identical tuxedos, 2 penguins meet. There's no big announcement, no fireworks, just a moment where their bodies angle toward each other, and something about the way they stop, how close they stand, how their heads tilt, makes it clear this isn't random. It's recognition. Penguin romance is not the Hollywood kind where everyone has perfect hair and unlimited time. It's more like, hello, yes, you again, excellent, we have work to do. And somehow that makes it sweeter. Because this place doesn't reward fantasy. It rewards consistency. If you watch them long enough, you start to see the affectionate gestures that look like tiny secrets. A gentle touch of beak against feathers. More like a careful tap than a kiss, but close enough for anyone with a tired heart. A soft call that's barely audible over the wind. A little bow of the head. These aren't dramatic displays. They're quiet signals, like 2 people recognizing each other across a crowded room and choosing to stand close without making it a performance. And then there's the pebble. If you've ever wanted proof that nature has a sense of humor, penguins offer it in the form of a rock. In several species that build pebble nests, adelies, gentoos, and others, pebbles are valuable. Not, I found this pretty stone on the beach, valuable. Valuable like building materials. Valuable like insulation. Valuable like the difference between an egg sitting dry and warm versus an egg sitting in cold slush wondering where it went wrong in life. So when a penguin picks up a pebble and carries it toward a nesting area, it's doing construction. It's also sometimes doing courtship. The gesture can look like a gift, and in a way it is a small offering that says, I can contribute, which is one of the most attractive sentences in any species. You see a penguin bend down and select a pebble with the seriousness of someone choosing produce at the grocery store. Not too big, not too small. Something that fits. Something that feels right. It lifts the pebble in its beak and waddles onward with careful concentration, because dropping it would be embarrassing, and penguins absolutely give off the vibe of creatures who remember embarrassment. It reaches another penguin, pauses, and sets the pebble down near a growing little pile. The other penguin looks down, then back up, then shifts closer. No applause. No romantic soundtrack. Just a calm acceptance that this rock matters, and the one who brought it is taking this seriously. The nest itself is an understated masterpiece. A circle of stones raised just enough to lift the egg above wet ground. A small fortress against meltwater. In a landscape where warmth is precious, elevating an egg by even a little can make a meaningful difference. And because pebbles are so useful, they become a kind of currency. Penguins don't have wallets, so they do what any sensible creature would do. They steal. You catch the pebble theft happening like a sleepy crime movie. One penguin waits until another turns its back, then leans in and plucks a pebble from the edge of a nest pile. It tries to walk away casually, which is hilarious because penguins cannot do casual. The thief waddles with the pebble held proudly, as if the pebble is a completely normal thing to be carrying at midnight and you're weird for noticing. The victim notices anyway. There's a sudden burst of energy, an indignant step forward, a sharp call, a quick chase that looks like two formal guests speed-walking through a ballroom. The thief drops the pebble. The pebble lands with a soft clack. Everyone pretends this isn't personal, but it is. Pebbles are serious business. And the absurdity of it, the drama of a stolen rock, doesn't cheapen the romance. It makes it real. Love in this place isn't floating poetry. It's teamwork and materials and persistence. It's building something simple and strong and hoping it holds through wind and time. You keep watching the pairs, how they stand close, how they mirror each other's posture. Some penguin species are known for forming strong pair bonds during the breeding season, and in certain cases those bonds can last across seasons, especially if the pair reunites successfully. It isn't a fairy tale of perfect, lifelong monogamy across every species and every individual. Nature rarely commits to one storyline, but there is loyalty here, a tendency to return, a preference to choose the familiar partner again when conditions allow. And that returning is its own kind of romance, not glamorous, but deeply calming. Because returning in a world like this is not easy. The beach you're standing on can look identical to every other stretch of snow and stone. The wind smears details. The sky shifts. The sea changes color by the minute. And yet penguins travel, sometimes astonishing distances, to feed, to migrate, to reach breeding sites, and then to come back to a specific colony, a specific shoreline, sometimes even the same general nesting area. You imagine the ocean as a dark highway with no signs. Penguins leave the colony and vanish into it, diving and gliding through a world that is three-dimensional and moving, a world where currents slide like invisible rivers. Out there, there's no turn left at the big tree. There's just water, light, magnetic fields, the taste of the sea, the shape of waves, the memory of coastlines. Scientists have studied penguin navigation in different ways, and while there's still mystery, it's clear they're not guessing. Penguins can use a combination of cues, visual landmarks near coasts, the position of the sun, the patterns of ocean swell, and likely the Earth's magnetic field as a kind of built-in reference. Think of it as layering signals the way their feathers layer warmth. No single cue has to be perfect. Together, they create a map that lives inside the body. That idea, an internal map, feels grand in a sleepy way. Your phone needs satellites and battery percentage and a good attitude from the nearest cell tower. A penguin needs the planet, the tilt of light, the pull of magnetism, the remembered shape of the shore. It swims through cold darkness and comes back to a place it recognizes, like it can feel home through its bones. And then, even when it gets back, it still has to find the right partner in a crowd. The colony isn't a quiet suburb with neatly labeled doors. It's an active, noisy neighborhood when fully awake, filled with thousands of similar bodies and overlapping paths. Yet pairs reunite. They do it with a mix of cues. Sound plays a big role, and you can feel that topic hovering nearby, like a penguin call carried on wind. But even before the louder vocal stories come later, you can already sense the pattern. Penguins don't just live near each other. They identify each other. You watch one penguin move through the group, stopping, turning its head, pausing as if it's listening and looking at the same time. It approaches another penguin, hesitates, then shifts away. Wrong one. The correction is gentle, not frantic. A few steps later, it stops again, and this time the other penguin responds immediately. Bodies angle inward. Heads bob in a small, synchronized rhythm. There's a tiny touch of beak to feathers that looks like confirmation, like, yes, it's you. Good. You didn't get eaten by something unpleasant. Excellent. The tenderness is practical. These birds have jobs to do. Nest building, egg tending, chick raising, feeding runs. But the way they keep choosing each other inside, all that work feels like a quiet triumph over the environment. The cold wants to reduce life to mere survival. Penguins respond by making room for connection anyway. You notice how the pebble piles grow, stone by stone, and it starts to feel like a metaphor your tired brain can actually tolerate. Not the kind that demands you learn a lesson. The kind that simply sits there, gentle and obvious. Little things matter. A small rock, a short greeting call, a brief moment of closeness in a vast landscape. The world doesn't always change through grand gestures. Sometimes it changes through the steady accumulation of small, careful choices. A penguin brings another pebble. Another accepts it. Another thief considers committing a pebble crime and then decides against it because a neighbor is watching. The colony keeps breathing, waking more fully now, the earlier stillness turning into a soft bustle. Yet, even in motion, the mood stays calm. There's no frantic energy, just purpose, and the grandeur of it grows quietly in you. These are animals that dive deep with slow hearts, that nap in tiny fragments on snow, that carry warmth in feathers and oil and community. And in the middle of all that, they still build nests with rocks and find each other again across ocean distances. They live on the edge of a world that looks empty, and they fill it with the simplest proof that life is not only about enduring. It's also about returning, about recognizing, about bringing something small in your beak and placing it gently beside someone else, as if saying, without words, I'm here. I came back. Let's keep going. The pebble piles keep growing in the pale light, and the small dramas of stolen stones fade back into the colony's normal heartbeat. Couples settle closer. The wind loses interest and drifts along the shoreline like it's looking for someone louder to bother. You watch one pair stand side by side near a low ring of rocks, and the way they pause together has a different weight than before. Less flirting, more focus. It's the quiet shift from building a home to protecting what goes inside it. Somewhere in the colony, an egg exists as an idea before it exists as a thing. You can almost feel the entire atmosphere change when that idea becomes real. Penguins don't treat eggs like decorations. They treat them like the center of gravity. Everything starts to orbit around a single, fragile promise, and the way they handle that promise is so careful it makes your own hands feel clumsy. You notice the ground first. Snow looks soft, but it's unforgiving. Ice looks smooth, but it's cold in a way that doesn't negotiate. The most important rule becomes obvious without anyone saying it. An egg must not touch the ice. Not for long. Not casually. Not even for a moment that feels small. In a world like this, small can become too late with alarming speed. That's where the penguin's most famous piece of quiet parenting comes in. And it's honestly one of the most ridiculous, magnificent balancing acts in nature. Instead of building a warm nest out of twigs and leaves like so many birds do, some penguins, especially the big royal ones, incubate their egg on their feet. On their feet. You let that sink in a way you let the ocean's rhythm sink in earlier. Imagine being handed the most important thing you'll ever protect and being told, great, balance it on your shoes. Also, it's freezing. Also, you cannot drop it. Good luck. Penguins hear that and respond with a calm little nod, like this is normal, like this is Tuesday. You watch an emperor penguin in your mind's eye, the kind that looks like it was designed for ceremony and storms, standing tall in a place where the horizon is almost empty. Somewhere between its feet sits a single egg, small against that massive body. The penguin's posture changes subtly, becoming even more stable, even more deliberate. Feet planted, body centered, movements reduced to essentials. It's like the bird becomes a tripod with a heartbeat. And then there's the brood pouch. That phrase sounds like a cozy accessory you buy online, but in penguin life, it's a whole warm shelter made from the penguin's own body. A fold of skin and feathers hangs down from the belly, forming a protective curtain over the egg. Under that curtain is warmth, real warmth, carried by blood and skin. It's not just insulation, it's contact. A soft, living seal that blocks wind and keeps heat close, like the most devoted blanket you've ever met. You can picture the moment the egg is settled into place. The penguin lowers itself slightly, nudges the egg with careful precision, and tucks it onto the tops of its feet. The motion is slow, controlled, almost ceremonial. There's no fumbling, no panique. It's not even showy. It's the kind of careful movement you make when you're carrying a full cup of coffee through a crowded room, except the stakes are slightly higher than my shirt gets ruined. Once the egg is positioned, the brood pouch drops down, covering it. The egg disappears from view, not because it's hidden in some dramatic way, but because it's sheltered. The penguin stands there, apparently holding nothing, yet holding everything. What makes it even more soothing to think about is the biology underneath. In many birds, there's a brood patch, an area of skin with more blood flow that helps transfer heat to eggs. Penguins have their own version of this warmth delivery system. They don't simply sit on the egg the way you imagine a chicken might. They create a warm chamber, a little microclimate under the belly, and the egg gets constant, steady heat without being pressed against frozen ground. It's a brilliant solution to a brutal environment, and it looks so simple from the outside that you might miss how perfect it is. The colony's mood shifts around these incubating adults. When a penguin is carrying an egg, everything about its movement becomes slower and more careful. It doesn't waddle casually. It doesn't take unnecessary steps. It stands as if the wind itself is a distraction it refuses to entertain. If it must move, it moves with a measured sway, the kind that keeps the egg stable. You can feel how much practice sits inside that stillness. Generations of bodies refining balance until it becomes instinct. You start noticing a particular kind of patience. It has a weight to it. Penguins don't incubate for an afternoon. They do it for weeks. Sometimes, depending on the species and conditions, that incubation period is long enough to test the limits of anyone's comfort. In emperor penguins, the male famously incubates the egg through the harshest part of the season while the female goes to sea to feed. The male may fast for a long time, relying on stored energy, standing in cold and wind, protecting the egg under that warm fold like it's the last candle in the world. You imagine what that feels like in the body. Hunger rising like a slow tide, muscles aching from stillness, cold pressing in from every direction, and yet the penguin remains steady. It doesn't have the option to set the egg down just for a second. That second might be the difference between life and failure. So the penguin becomes a pillar, a quiet, stubborn monument to the idea that devotion can be physical. And because penguins are not in a melodrama, they do this without performance. No such speeches, no grand gestures, just a steady stance, eyes half-lidded against the glare of snow, breath puffing out in small clouds, and beneath the brood pouch, that warm secret. In colonies where both parents share incubation, many species trade shifts. You can witness another kind of careful ritual, the handoff. The transfer of an egg between parents is one of those moments that looks almost too delicate for a place this harsh. It's like watching two people pass a candle flame without letting it flicker out. The parents face each other. They shuffle closer. Their bodies angle in a way that blocks wind. The receiving parent lowers its belly slightly, preparing that warm chamber. The holding parent adjusts, nudging the egg with its feet, slowly sliding it across with movements so careful you can't help holding your own breath. The egg moves from one set of feet to the other. For a brief moment, it might be exposed to air, and everything in the posture of both birds says, not for long. The brood pouch of the receiving parent lowers. The egg disappears again, safe under warmth and feathers. The parents separate by a fraction. One looks ready to leave for the sea. The other settles into stillness like it's sinking into a warm chair. It's all done in silence and small sounds, soft calls, tiny grunts of effort, the faint scrape of feet on snow. No cheering crowd, no soundtrack. Yet it feels monumental because you're watching a living system that has learned to protect something fragile in the most unforgiving conditions. If you zoom your imagination a little closer, you can see how the egg itself is often shaped in a way that works with this life. Many penguin eggs are slightly pointed or pear-shaped rather than perfectly round. There are different theories about why, but it's easy to appreciate the practical side without getting too tangled in it. A less-than-round egg can behave differently when it rolls. Instead of making a clean escape straight downhill, it might curve, circle, stay closer. In a world of slopes and uneven ground and crowded nests, staying closer is a kind of mercy. For penguin species that do build nests, using those precious pebbles you watched earlier, the logic stays the same. The nest raises the eggs above wet ground, and the parent still uses its body warmth to incubate, settling over the clutch with a controlled posture that keeps heat steady. Whether the egg is on feet under a pouch or nestled in a pebble ring beneath a protective body, the message doesn't change. Keep it warm, keep it dry, keep it safe. And it's not just warmth. It's timing. It's consistency. Eggs don't appreciate improvisation. Penguins learn to be steady in a way that feels almost hypnotic to watch. They don't fidget unless they must. They adjust their posture with tiny movements so the egg stays in the best position. They shield it from wind by angling their bodies. They lean into the same communal logic you've already seen, standing near others, taking advantage of shared shelter, letting the group soften the environment. There's a kind of quiet grandeur in the way an incubating penguin becomes the environment's opposite. The world is chaos, wind, cold, pressure, hunger. The penguin responds with constancy. The egg becomes a small, warm center that doesn't argue, and the penguin becomes the guardian of that center. And because this is penguin life, there's still a touch of comedy threaded through the elegance. You'll see an incubating bird try to take a step and do it with such exaggerated care that it looks like it's walking on a freshly waxed floor while carrying a bowl of soup. Another might shuffle and then freeze mid-motion as if it suddenly remembered. Oh, right. Prestigious. The seriousness is real, but it lives right beside the absurdity, and somehow that combination makes it even more comforting. It's the universe reminding you that tenderness doesn't have to be dramatic to be profound. You stand there on your snowy shoreline, letting the idea of the brood pouch settle into you like warmth. A fold of skin and feathers creating a private little room. Feet acting as a cradle. A body becoming a shelter. In the middle of cold that could easily feel empty, penguins create a pocket of life with nothing but patience, balance, and a quiet refusal to rush. And the colony continues around them, pebbles clacking softly, distant calls drifting across snow, while those incubating adults hold still, warm and steady, as if they've discovered the simplest secret in the world. Protect the fragile thing by becoming calm enough to carry it. The egg you've been holding in your mind, balanced on feet, hidden beneath a warm fold of feathers, eventually stops being a secret and becomes a presence. A chick arrives like a soft, awkward miracle, not sleek and waterproof yet, not built for the ocean's black corridors, but built for one thing with total commitment, being small and needing warmth. You can almost feel the colony respond when the first chicks appear. The adults don't throw a party. Penguins are not big on confetti. They just tighten their routines and shift their attention like a spotlight turning. A chick's body is all fluff and vulnerability at first. And that fluff isn't just for cuteness. It's a starter coat, a temporary comfort system that buys time while real feathers and real waterproofing are still under construction. You watch one chick, still close to its parent, wobbling on tiny feet like it's learning how gravity works for the first time. It leans too far, corrects, leans again, and finally settles against the adult's body as if it's magnetized to warmth. The adult barely moves, just lowers its belly slightly, angles its stance, shields the chick from wind with a calm tilt of the body. The chick disappears into that sheltered space for a moment, and the whole scene looks like warmth physically swallowing cold. But chicks don't stay tucked forever. They grow. They get curious. They start doing that thing all young creatures do, testing the world like it's a new toy with absolutely no understanding of consequences. They step away, wobble a few feet, then panic and rush back. Not fast because they're still shaped like a plush potato on legs, but urgent in spirit. You can see the exact moment they realize warmth is not a default setting. As more chicks hatch, The colony becomes a kind of living nursery. Adults go back and forth between tending and feeding because the sea still demands work. That's the constant tension here. You can't raise a chick without food, and you can't get food without leaving. Penguins solve this problem with the same quiet intelligence you've already watched. No grand speeches, just systems. And then the creche begins to form. At first it looks accidental. A few chicks end up near each other because they all wandered into the same sheltered patch of snow. A gust of wind nudges them closer. One chick presses against another because it's cold and doesn't care about personal boundaries. Soon there's a small cluster, fluffy bodies touching, little heads bobbing, a gentle tangle of awkward limbs. It's the softest kind of crowd. As the days pass, the cluster becomes a pattern. More chicks join. The adults begin leaving more often for longer stretches, heading out to feed and returning with food stored inside them. Because yes, penguins do that. And it's both impressive and a little gross in the way all effective parenting can be. The point is, while the adults are away, the chicks need a strategy. They can't all be individually guarded every second. So the chicks do what penguins do best. They cooperate without making it dramatic. A creche is essentially daycare, but run by the laws of cold and hunger instead of by snack schedules and finger painting. Chicks gather together in groups, sometimes small, sometimes huge depending on the species and the colony. Emperor and king penguin chicks can form enormous creches, big, shifting masses of gray fluff that look like the world's most serious pillow fight froze mid-scene. In other species, the groups might be smaller, but the logic stays similar. Together is warmer, together is safer, together is easier. You watch the group as if it's a single organism. The outer chicks face the wind, the inner chicks get the calm. Then the group subtly shifts and rotates, because comfort is best when it's shared. It's the same fairness you sensed in adult huddling, scaled down into fluff and squeaky determination. The chicks don't call it teamwork, but their bodies understand it. Warmth is a resource, and the best way to keep it is to pool it. There's also safety in numbers, even when the numbers are made of wobble and bad balance. A predator sees one chick alone and thinks, easy. A predator sees a cluster and has to make choices. The group complicates the world. It adds confusion. Confusion is a form of protection. And honestly, mild confusion is what creches do best. The chicks mill around each other, bumping gently, stepping on toes, forgetting where they were headed 2 seconds ago. One chick tries to walk through the middle like it's important, then gets stuck between two other chicks and decides the best solution is to sit down and stare at the sky. Another chick pecks at a neighbor's fluff, curious, not mean, and the neighbor responds with a dramatic little wobble that suggests it's filing a complaint. The whole thing is chaos, but sleepy chaos, the kind that doesn't raise your heart rate. It's like watching toddlers at a slow-motion parade. Underneath the comedy is something genuinely impressive. This system frees parents to do the hard work of feeding. In many penguin species, adults have to travel out to sea to find fish, krill, or squid. Those trips can take time, and the distance can vary depending on conditions. If every chick had to be guarded individually the whole time, feeding would become impossible. The creche acts like a living compromise. The chicks stay together, and a few adults may remain nearby as watchful presences, sometimes not full-time babysitters in the human sense, but adults whose timing or role places them closer to the group. In emperor penguins, for example, adults in the colony can be around the creche while others are out feeding, and the creche itself becomes part of the colony's protective structure. You can feel the colony's rhythm shifting again. The sea pulls adults away, the land holds the chicks together, and the whole system continues like breathing. The chicks, meanwhile, are changing fast. The downy fluff that looked like a perfect winter coat at first becomes less adequate as they grow and start needing more energy. Down is warm, but it isn't waterproof, and it isn't the sleek armor that adult feathers are. Chicks can't just stroll into the ocean and start underwater flying. They're stuck in the in-between stage, too big to be constant pocket-sized warmth under a parent, too unprepared to handle the full environment alone. The creche fills that gap like a soft bridge. You watch a chick at the edge of the group look around, suddenly uncertain. It steps away half a meter, then pauses like it's realized the wind is louder out there. The chick turns back and presses into the cluster again, finding the warmer center, and you can almost feel the relief in its body. Warmth becomes a lesson they learn with their whole being. Cold teaches quickly. The group shifts, and you notice something tender. Even though the chicks aren't parents, they still behave like little heat sources for each other. They lean in. They press close. They accept being pressed close. Nobody's trying to look cool. There's no ego in the creche, just the blunt logic of comfort. And yet, there's still individuality in the middle of all that fluff. Some chicks are bolder, stepping out and exploring a few more steps before returning. Some are sleepy, settling down quickly, heads drooping as if they've inherited the adult's gift for micro-rest. Some are loud in their own small way, making little calls that ripple through the group. You catch how the cluster responds, not with panic, but with small adjustments, tiny turns of the head, subtle shifts that keep the group cohesive. The most mysterious part, the part that feels like magic even when you know it's biology and behavior, is how parents manage to return and find their own chick in the crowd. This is where you can sense the next layer of penguin life approaching. Voices and recognition, and a strange way identity travels through wind, but you keep your focus gently on what's in front of you. The creche is a living, moving daycare that somehow doesn't fall apart. A parent returns from the sea, body heavier with food, and approaches the group with purpose. The creche reacts like a tide pulling back from a rock. Chicks turn. They shuffle. A few step forward. The returning adult moves through them with calm authority, and somewhere in that soft chaos, the right chick emerges. It's not always neat. Sometimes chicks rush the wrong adult and get corrected with a firm nudge. Sometimes an adult pauses, scanning, listening, waiting for the right response. But the reunion happens again and again in a way that feels improbably precise for a place where everything looks the same. You watch the feeding moment like it's a small ceremony. The chick stands close, body vibrating with anticipation. The adult lowers its head, and the chick reaches up. The exchange is quick and practiced, not sentimental, but still intimate. Food moves from adult to chick, and the chick's posture shifts afterward. Less desperate, more settled, like someone who finally got the blanket placed just right. Then the adult may leave again, because the scene never stops asking, and the chick returns to the creche, sliding back into the warm cluster, disappearing into fluff and bodies and gentle chaos. The group accepts it without ceremony. The creche expands, contracts, reshapes. It's a living shelter, an improvised city of warmth built from small bodies and shared need. The longer you watch, the more you realize how grand this is in its own quiet way. Penguins don't build nurseries with walls. They build them with behavior. They turn community into insulation. They turn crowding into care. They turn mild confusion into safety. The cold environment is massive and indifferent, and the chicks are tiny, yet the colony makes room for them anyway, not by overpowering the world, but by organizing themselves inside it. And you, standing at the edge of this scene, feel the same softness seep into you. You stop trying to control your own thoughts so tightly. You let them cluster the way the chicks cluster, close together, warmer together, less exposed to the wind. The creche keeps shifting under the moonlight, a gentle, moving quilt of life, and the colony's quiet magnificence grows again, not in a loud crescendo, but in the steady, patient proof that even on snow and stone, warmth can be made, shared, guarded, and passed along like a pebble placed carefully into a growing nest. The creche keeps moving like a slow, breathing quilt, but it isn't silent anymore. Not truly. Little sounds weave through it. Peeps from chicks, murmurs from adults, the occasional sharp note that slices the wind cleanly. The colony has a soundtrack, and it isn't background noise. It's how everyone stays stitched to everyone else. A returning adult stops at the edge of the chicks, head lifted as if it's testing the air. Then it calls. It doesn't sound cute. It sounds confident. A whistle with grit in it, a bray with a polished edge, a vibrating trumpet that feels too big for a bird in formal wear. The call rolls across snow and stone, reaches the waterline, and for a moment, even the ocean seems to listen. It repeats once, then stops, and the quiet that follows feels organized, like a door gently closing. Dozens of chicks answer at once. Heads pop up, bodies wobble forward. A wave of peeps ripples through the group. Most of them wrong, enthusiastic and useless, like everyone yelling me in a crowded room. But one answer lands with perfect timing, and the adult turns its head with sudden precision. That's the moment you feel it. This isn't guessing. This is recognition. In a place where wind shreds scent and snow erases footprints, voices become fingerprints. Penguins can look similar at a distance. Black backs, pale fronts, feathers laid like a tailored suit, but they don't sound identical. Each call carries a pattern. Rhythm, pitch, the spacing between notes, even the little tremble at the end that only that bird seems to have. If humans had to find each other in a storm, you'd probably start yelling your full legal name. Penguins do something cleaner. They carry a signature in their voice, almost like a private nickname that travels better than footprints. Cold air helps too. Sound can carry in crisp air with a clarity that feels sharp, and the flat ice can bounce calls back like a quiet echo. So a penguin doesn't just shout into emptiness. It's calling into a landscape that returns sound in softened copies, giving the colony depth, like the world itself is repeating messages to make sure they arrive. The adult calls again, slightly altered, and the chick answers again, slightly altered too, like the two of them are tightening a knot. The chick pushes forward, bumping through fluff and feet, and the adult steps closer, meeting it halfway. Their loud notes soften into smaller ones, a private exchange that doesn't need translation to feel intimate. The adult lowers its head. The chick reaches up. For a second, they're so close the wind can't get between them. It's hard not to admire the skill behind it. You struggle to find your own friend in a noisy cafe. Penguins find each other in a blizzard of voices, then waddle straight toward the sound with the steady certainty of someone who refuses to be lost. Farther along the beach, another call rises, deeper, more nasal, almost donkey-like. Two adults turn at the same time. One answers with a rhythm that matches, but a tone that's different, and the exchange starts. Call, answer, call, answer. They close distance without seeing each other clearly, like two lighthouse beams sweeping until they overlap. When they meet, there's no big performance. Penguins don't do dramatic, unless a pebble theft is happening and everyone's suddenly a lawyer. They stand close. Heads angle inward. Their voices drop to quiet notes, because the loud part was for finding and the soft part is for belonging. A brief touch of beak to feather seals it, like a signature. Some pairs lean into this with almost musical patience. In some species, you'll hear longer display songs during courtship, phrases repeated until the rhythm becomes unmistakable, while everyday contact calls stay shorter and more practical. The fancy songs are like the penguin version of dressing up a message. Not only find me, but yes, it's me, and I'm still choosing you. One bird gives a phrase, the other answers with a matching phrase, and the timing becomes a little duet, call and reply. Like two people finishing each other's sentences, but in a way that's actually helpful. Those softer sounds don't travel far, and that's the point. They're not meant for the colony. They're meant for one familiar ear. You remember those pebble gifts. How a simple rock can mean I can build with you. Sound works the same way. It's a resource you spend to be found, and you spend it carefully. Too loud, and everyone comes running. Too soft, and the wind takes it. Penguins learn the exact volume of I'm here without turning it into everyone look at me. Chicks, naturally, haven't learned that yet. They call because hunger is loud and warmth is urgent. Their peeps bounce off each other and turn the creche into a living instrument. It should be exhausting. Somehow it isn't. The sound comes in waves with pauses that feel like breath, and the rhythm starts to match the ocean's own pulse. Every so often the whole crash goes quiet for a beat, like someone pressed a mute button. Then the peeping resumes, softer, then louder, then soft again. Practice, practice, practice. An adult threads through the chicks and stops. A short, firm call drops like a stone. The chick in front answers, close, but not right. The adult listens, then steps past without anger, only certainty. Another call, another answer. This time the timing is perfect, the tone familiar, and the adult's posture relaxes a fraction, the way your shoulders relax when you finally find what you've been searching for. Finding the right chick isn't sentimental, it's essential. Feed the wrong one, and yours goes hungry. In this environment, mistakes aren't gentle. So penguins don't rely on luck. They rely on identity carried through air. That's why, after long feeding trips, a parent can return to a colony that looks like a sea of identical suits and still lock onto one hungry voice like a compass needle snapping north. The same thread stretches across longer distances too. Adults leave for the sea, dive deep with slow hearts and careful oxygen, move through the hush beneath the surface, then return to land and step straight back into the colony's chorus. They cross from underwater silence to crowded sound without looking rattled, as if silence and noise are just different rooms in the same house. You picture the worst weather, snow driving sideways, visibility reduced to a few steps, the world turned into a white wall, and the system still holds. Calls cut through, answers return. A chick hears its parent and goes from wobble to direction in a single heartbeat. Panic to purpose instantly, because a voice it knows has found it. That's the quiet miracle. Familiarity built through repetition. A chick learns its parents call the way you learn a friend's laugh, without effort, because it matters. A parent learns its chick sound because it has to. The bond becomes audible, and in that sound is something that feels very close to a name. Not written, not spoken in letters, but carried in tone and rhythm and timing. The colony keeps pulsing, calls rising, answering, fading, until it feels less like noise and more like a living map. You don't need to decode every note to feel the meaning. Everyone is trying to find someone. Everyone is trying to stay connected. Wind can erase shapes and footprints, but it can't easily erase a voice that belongs to one bird. A final call rings out, clear, strong, unmistakable, and somewhere in the crash a chick answers with perfect timing. The two sounds meet in the cold air like a bridge forming out of nothing, and the colony's grandeur deepens again, not in its silence this time, but in its ability to be loud with purpose. Those voices keep drifting across the snow like invisible threads, tying parents to chicks, partners to partners, the whole colony to itself. Once you start hearing it as a map, you can't unhear it. Every call becomes a signal. I'm here, I'm hungry, I'm back, I'm yours, I'm fine. And somewhere beneath all that sound is the reason the colony can afford to keep singing at all. Dinner. The ocean is not generous in a warm, comforting way. It's generous in the way a vending machine is generous. If you know the right buttons, if you can handle the cold metal, if you accept that sometimes it takes your coins and gives you nothing. Penguins have learned the ocean's vending machine logic. They know where food gathers, when it moves, and how to catch it without wasting energy. You follow one adult as it leaves the colony. No ceremony, just a purposeful waddle toward the waterline, like a commuter heading to work. The wind tugs at its feathers and fails. The bird pauses at the edge, looks out at the dark surface, then slips in. The moment it hits water, the body becomes sleek again, and you can almost hear the colony's noise fade behind it, replaced by the hush of underwater space. Down there, food is not a single thing. It's a shifting menu. For many penguins, it's fish, small, slippery, silver flashes that move like thrown coins through the water. For others, it's squid, soft-bodied, quick, sometimes clever enough to vanish into darkness with a sudden jet. And for many, especially in southern seas, it's krill, tiny shrimp-like creatures that gather in enormous swarms, turning patches of ocean into living clouds. Krill are the kind of food that doesn't look impressive individually, but when you find a swarm, it's like discovering an entire buffet floating in the water. You picture a penguin approaching a krill swarm. The water around it becomes speckled with tiny bodies, a shimmer of motion. The penguin's flippers slow slightly, then it glides through and begins quick, precise snaps. The feeding isn't messy. It's efficient. Mouth opens, closes, a rhythm that matches the ocean's pulse. The penguin doesn't need to chase one krill across the sea. It needs to pass through the cloud and take what's there like harvesting. When the prey is fish, the mood changes. Fish don't want to be eaten, and they show it by moving fast and moving together. A school turns as one, flashing like a single silver sheet. The penguin angles its body, accelerates, then glides at the last second, using momentum like a quiet weapon. Fish scatter. The penguin chooses a line through them, snaps one, maybe two, then continues. It's not a frantic chase. It's a controlled pursuit, the kind that looks smooth because the penguin has done it 1,000 times and doesn't waste motion. This is where the elegance of underwater flight becomes practical. The flippers beat like wings, but with more force. The body slices forward. Turning is quick, banking, rolling, correcting, without the clumsy oversteering you'd expect from something that waddles on land. The ocean becomes their true runway, and the hunt becomes a dance that ends in a meal. You realize how important timing is. Penguins don't just hunt wherever. They hunt where the ocean's physics gathers food. Currents push nutrients upward. Nutrients feed plankton. Plankton feed krill. Krill feed fish and squid. Penguins follow the chain, the way a sleepy person follows the smell of food toward a kitchen. Certain areas, like places where cold and warm currents meet, or where underwater landscapes push water upward, can be richer, more reliable. Penguins learn these places like you learn shortcuts through your neighborhood. Some penguins hunt alone, and there's something peaceful in that image. A single tuxedo bird moving through a dark, quiet world, relying on its own senses and muscle memory. Others hunt in loose groups, especially when prey is abundant, using the presence of multiple bodies to stir up fish or corral them. It isn't always coordinated like a choreographed team, but the effect can still be helpful. A school of fish doesn't like surprises from multiple angles. Penguins provide those angles. When they surface, you see only the breath. A quick exhale, a small cloud, then another dive. The hunt is mostly invisible from shore, and that invisibility adds to the mystery. The penguin disappears into the ocean and returns with food that seems to come from nowhere, like it reached into the sea's pocket and pulled out something shiny. You also start noticing the patience. Hunting is not always instant success. Penguins may dive repeatedly, scanning, searching, making decisions in a world where everything is moving. They can't waste energy chasing nothing. So they adjust. They change depth. They follow faint cues, flashes of movement, the presence of other predators feeding, the feel of current, the light patterns that hint at prey below. It's quiet work, not a constant frenzy. And this is where the earlier diving calm ties directly into dinner logistics. A penguin that can slow its heart, manage oxygen, and glide efficiently can search longer. It can reach deeper prey. It can make more attempts per unit of energy. Calm is not just a vibe, it's a strategy. Underwater serenity is how you afford underwater success. When a penguin catches fish, it often swallows them headfirst, which is practical because fish are built with fins that don't appreciate going backward. Watching a penguin handle prey, you see those little adjustments, head tilts, quick shakes, tiny repositioning movements, until the fish slides down neatly. No wasted effort. No extended struggle. The penguin goes right back to moving because stopping is expensive in cold water. Eventually, after enough dives, the penguin turns back toward shore. That decision feels different than the hunt. It's not predatory focus now. it's responsibility. The bird has food, and somewhere on land a chick is waiting, one voice among thousands, but one voice that matters. Back at the colony, the soundscape is thicker. Calls overlap. Chicks peep. Adults answer. The returning penguin moves through this chorus with a steady purpose, scanning, listening, making that careful vocal exchange you just learned to recognize. Call. Answer. Call. Answer. The right chick emerges like a solution. Then comes the part that is both deeply practical and, if you think about it too hard, mildly unsettling. Penguins don't carry fish in bags. They carry it in themselves. Many penguin species feed their chicks by regurgitation. The adult brings back partially digested food or stored meals. Then the chick takes it directly from the parent's beak. It's not pretty in the human sense. It's perfect in the penguin sense. In an environment where you can't carry groceries easily and where leaving food exposed would be a disaster, internal storage is the cleanest option. The adult becomes a traveling container. The feeding moment is quick, practiced, intimate. The chick reaches up, beak open, and the adult lowers its head. The chick takes what it needs. There's urgency, but also rhythm. The adult doesn't just dump food randomly. It delivers it in controlled amounts, adjusting to the chick's hunger. The chick's body changes as it eats, posture relaxing, movements slowing, the frantic edge softening. Food turns into calm in real time, and it's strangely soothing to watch. The adult may feed the chick, then step back and stand still for a moment, as if resetting. Then it might call again, check the surroundings, and either stay or leave for another foraging run. The system repeats until it becomes the colony's pulse. Adults moving to the sea, returning with food, feeding, leaving again. The creche holds chicks in between. Voices reunite families. Feathers and fat and huddles hold warmth. Everything interlocks. You can sense how the environment shapes the schedule. When food is abundant near the colony, adults can make shorter trips and return more often. When conditions shift, when prey moves farther away, when sea ice changes the route, trips can become longer and more taxing. Penguins adjust. They have to. Their lives are a continuous negotiation with a changing ocean. And yet, even with all that complexity, the scene remains calm. Penguins don't speed run their existence. They move with purpose, but without franticness. They're built to spend energy carefully, and that careful spending shows up everywhere, from deep dives with slow hearts to feeding runs that balance risk, distance, and reward. Standing on this beach, listening to the colony's chorus, and imagining the invisible hunting dances beneath the sea, you feel the magnificence stacking higher. Penguins are not just surviving cold. They're managing a whole economy of energy and food, a system where every dive matters and every return is guided by voice. They turn the ocean's shifting pantry into a steady supply line, and they do it while looking like they're dressed for a formal event and mildly inconvenienced by the concept of land. The penguin that just fed its chick steps away, feathers smooth, posture composed, and the chick settles back into the creche with a quieter peep. The soundscape shifts again, returning to its gentle, living hum, and you can almost taste the logic behind it. Patience, precision, and the calm certainty that the sea will offer something, if you meet it the right way. The colony settles after the feeding rush, the way a busy kitchen settles after dinner service, still warm with motion, but quieter, more satisfied. Chicks tuck back into the creche like they're returning to a shared blanket. Adults stand with that calm posture that always looks a little like judgment, as if they're grading the ocean on its performance. And as you keep listening to the soft hum of calls and the distant hush of waves, the serious magnificence of penguin life starts making room for the wonderfully weird. Because penguins are elegant, sure. They're also odd, in the best way. They're the rare creatures that can be both noble and ridiculous in the same breath, sometimes literally in the same breath cloud. You notice it when an adult waddles past with a dignity that would suit a royal procession, then stops to scratch itself with a movement that looks like it's trying to solve an itch with sheer stubbornness. You notice it when two penguins stand chest to chest in a quiet reunion. Then one casually steals a pebble like it's running a tiny, polite crime syndicate. You notice it when a chick tries to look brave, steps into the wind for exactly 1 second, and immediately regrets every choice it's ever made. The longer you watch, the more the colony feels like a small city with its own strange customs. There are neighbors, there are disputes, there are alliances that look accidental until you realize nothing here is truly accidental. A few meters away, another species has claimed a patch of ground, maybe a different kind of seabird, standing stiffly as if it's pretending not to be cold. They don't mingle the way best friends do, but they live close enough that their lives brush against each other. Penguins share space with other animals because the map of good places to live is limited. A coastline that offers safe landing, a slope that sheds meltwater, a spot that's sheltered from wind. Those are the same features many creatures are looking for. So you get these odd neighborhoods. Penguins nesting near other seabirds. Seabirds taking advantage of the same cliffs and ledges. Everyone pretending they're not watching each other while absolutely watching each other. It's less friendship bracelet, and more we've all agreed this is the least terrible address. And still, you can feel the subtle advantages. More eyes means more awareness. More bodies means the environment gets shaped, snow packed down, paths formed, wind patterns altered at ground level. Even the noise helps in a strange way, because a loud colony is a living alarm system. When everything is quiet, the smallest disturbance feels huge. When there's a steady baseline of sound, changes can stand out like a wrong note in music. Penguins don't need to love their neighbors to benefit from them. Your attention drifts toward the waterline, where the ocean's edge glows faintly. A dark shape bobs in the shallows, maybe a seal at a distance, maybe just your imagination giving the sea a face. Penguins and seals share these waters, and the relationship is complicated. Sometimes a seal is simply another creature passing through, breathing at the surface and disappearing again. Sometimes a seal is a threat. Sometimes it's a neighbor you respect from afar because it's massive and clearly not interested in your personal boundaries. That mix, coexistence with a side of danger, adds a strange texture to penguin life. It forces the colony to be alert without being frantic. It forces a kind of steady readiness. Penguins have the calm of creatures that can move quickly when they need to, and the wisdom to save that quickness for the moments that matter. You watch an adult penguin step toward the sea, pause, scan, then slip in. It doesn't look afraid. It looks assessing, like it's reading the water the way you read a room before deciding where to sit. That quiet assessment is one of their superpowers. They aren't reckless. They aren't constantly tense. They're tuned. And then there are the friendships that look like they belong in a bedtime story, even when they're built from something more practical than romance. Penguins can be surprisingly social with each other beyond simple pair bonding. They'll stand close, press flippers briefly, exchange those small beak touches that look like reassurance. They'll form little clusters that aren't quite huddles, just cozy proximity. You'll see adults tolerate chicks that aren't theirs brushing against them in the creche, not always warmly, but often without aggression. It's a community with boundaries, sure, but also with a certain softness, a willingness to let closeness happen because closeness helps. Sometimes that softness becomes one of the colony's most charming mysteries: adoption. You can imagine how it happens. A chick wanders. A parent returns from the sea and finds chaos. Thousands of voices, fluff everywhere, wind smearing the edges of the world. Maybe the chick approaches the wrong adult. Maybe an adult's own chick is lost or gone. In some situations, adults have been seen feeding or caring for chicks that aren't genetically theirs, at least for a time. It isn't always a fairy tale. Sometimes it's confusion. Sometimes it's a misdirected instinct. Sometimes it's a brief kindness in a world that doesn't guarantee happy endings. Still, the fact that it happens at all feels like something warm flickering in the cold. And then there are the famous human-style headlines. Same-sex penguin pairs. It's not a joke, and it's not a morality play. It's simply something that's been observed. Penguins forming pair bonds with same-sex partners in some cases, especially noted in captivity, but also reported in the wild in different ways, depending on species and circumstances. Sometimes these pairs build nests. Sometimes they incubate. Sometimes they attempt to raise a chick if an egg becomes available, whether through adoption, egg swapping, or human-managed situations. The colony doesn't gasp. The snow doesn't clutch pearls. Penguins just keep doing penguin things. Stand close, exchange calls, build, protect, endure. Watching that idea settle in your mind feels oddly comforting because it fits the bigger pattern you've been seeing all along. Penguins are problem solvers, not philosophers. When they bond, when they cooperate, when they raise chicks, it's less about a story you want them to fit and more about the steady fact that life keeps finding ways to continue. Your gaze slides to a penguin preening again. Slow beak strokes through the feathers. This, too, is one of the colony's quietly strange marvels. Penguins are basically walking waterproof systems. They don't need lotions or sprays or complicated routines from a skincare influencer who has never seen wind. They have feather structure, oil, and the patience to maintain both. Which is exactly where the colony's weirdest humor sneaks in. Because when humans see a creature thriving in harsh conditions, humans immediately ask, what can I smear on myself to survive this? Some animals use mud as sunscreen. Some use dust. Some have thick skin or special pigments. Humans historically have tried everything. And at this point, your brain might remember that earlier little whisper of a callback you haven't earned yet. Remember that crocodile dung sunscreen? Yeah, about that. Here's the gentle truth that makes the sarcasm land softly. Crocodile dung has shown up in old human remedies and faux practices in various places and times, and the internet loves turning that into ancient beauty hack clickbait. Sunscreen specifically is not the clean, reliable headline you want it to be. And if you're hearing crocodile dung and skincare in the same sentence, your best move is to let that sentence drift away into the night like a bad idea you don't have to answer. Penguins would never. Penguins don't do weird smears. They do systems. Their feather oil is their waterproofing. Their behavior is their warmth. Their group is their shelter. Their skincare routine is preening, which looks like meditation and functions like maintenance. A penguin doesn't need to invent a questionable paste because its body already contains the logic of protection. Still, the thought is funny in a sleepy way. Humans, anxious and imaginative, trying to copy nature with messy shortcuts. Penguins, calmly maintaining their coat with a few patient strokes of the beak. One approach is a soothing ritual. The other is a regret you can smell from across the room. And speaking of smell, because yes, the colony has one, and you're standing close enough to feel reality gently tapping your shoulder. There's another odd penguin fact that makes the whole place feel more alive. Penguin guano. Penguins eat seafood. They live in dense colonies. You can connect the dots without anyone drawing a diagram for you. The result is that penguin colonies leave stains, real, visible, unmistakable signatures on the landscape. On some coasts, those guano marks are so noticeable that researchers have used them to help spot colonies from afar, even from aerial or satellite imagery in certain contexts, because a big group of penguins doesn't exactly disappear politely. They leave evidence. They leave a footprint made of color and chemistry. It's strangely poetic if you let it be. Penguins write their presence onto the world. The snow isn't just snow. It's a record. The rocks aren't just rocks. They're building blocks and also witness. And guano isn't only a mess, it's a nutrient signal. It feeds local ecosystems in ways that ripple outward. Tiny organisms, plants in milder regions, even the chemistry of nearby land. Penguins can shape it by simply existing in one place long enough. A colony becomes not just a gathering of birds, but a force that changes the environment around it. Elegant tuxedo bodies leaving behind highly unglamorous proof of life, and still making the world richer in the process. You watch a penguin waddle past a patch of stained snow and think about how that's the real penguin vibe. Dignity and chaos sharing the same suit. They'll dive like underwater angels and then waddle like someone who forgot where their knees are. They'll sing a signature call across wind and then argue over a pebble with the seriousness of legal professionals. They'll raise a chick with patience and then collectively turn a section of snow into a biological highlighter. Majestic, unbothered, slightly gross, perfect. Another weird, quietly brilliant detail drifts into your mind as you watch one penguin pause near the water. The ocean is salty, and penguins spend their lives surrounded by it. They eat salty prey. They can swallow seawater by accident. Many penguins have specialized glands that help remove excess salt, allowing them to handle a life that would dehydrate a less prepared creature. The salt doesn't get to boss them around. Their body has a way to manage it, to turn too much into handled. It's like having a built-in filter system, and it feels like the kind of feature humans would charge extra for, like a subscription upgrade. Premium hydration, now with salt removal. All these oddities, the guano signatures, the pebble theft, the adoption moments, the built-in desalination, the courtship that looks like construction work, don't distract from the grandeur. They deepen it. They make the colony feel real, textured, complicated, alive. They remind you that magnificence doesn't require perfection. It can come from a creature that is both an underwater athlete and a waddling little comedian, both a careful parent and a shameless pebble thief, both a quiet singer and an unapologetic producer of evidence. You stand there, letting the colony's soundscape drift through you again, and the weirdness becomes soothing rather than distracting. It's the kind of weird that relaxes you, because it doesn't demand interpretation. It's simply life being itself in a place that looks empty until penguins fill it with habit and voice and warmth and ridiculous little stories. And somewhere in the back of your mind, the crocodile dung sunscreen line settles into its rightful place. Not a fact you need to carry, but a small, sleepy joke you'll remember later, the way you remember a funny comment right before drifting off. Penguins don't need it. Penguins don't need most of the nonsense humans invent. They have feathers, they have oil, they have community, and they have the calm confidence to keep doing what they do, quietly, strangely, magnificently on the edge of the world. The colony's weird little city keeps humming. Guano signatures on snow, pebble politics, coal stitching families back together. And then you notice something that doesn't quite belong, like a foreign object in a dream that still somehow makes sense. A faint line in the snow that looks too straight to be wind-made. A tiny flag marker, half buried near a rock. A footprint pattern that isn't the clean, web stamp of a penguin. Human footprints. They're not fresh enough to feel intrusive, but they're there. A quiet reminder that you're not the first person to stand at the edge of this world and stare at tuxedo birds like they're holding the secrets of calm. Humans have always done that. We arrive at something wild and immediately start trying to understand it, measure it, record it, name it, and if we're being honest, turn it into a story we can carry home. The difference here is that the good humans arrive with a kind of carefulness that matches the penguin's own vibe. They don't burst into the colony like they own it. They move like guests, quiet guests with too many pockets. You picture them in heavy jackets and goggles, faces half covered, breath turning into white clouds that vanish as quickly as penguin exhales. They carry notebooks that turn damp and stiff in the cold, so they guard them like treasure. They carry instruments that look strange against the simple landscape, tripods, antennas, small cases with foam inside. And they move slowly, because in places like this, rushing isn't just rude, it's dangerous. You can feel the tension they're always managing, wanting to know more without becoming a problem. Some of the best penguin science is astonishingly patient. It's sitting still for hours while a colony does what it does, letting the birds forget you exist. It's watching the same nest day after day, learning the rhythm of shifts, the timing of returns, the subtle differences between one pair and the next. It's counting and recounting because the wind changes visibility and your eyes lie in the cold. It's mapping the colony like it's a living organism, where groups gather, where paths form, where the creche settles when the weather leans harsh. You imagine the kind of work that happens when you're not in a documentary voiceover. Someone crouched behind a low ridge, writing downtime stamps, heart steady, gloves bulky, pencil pressed hard because ink freezes or refuses to flow like it's offended. Someone listening to calls and trying to tell which bird is which by sound alone. Someone standing farther away than they'd like because distance is respect, and respect is part of the job. And you can almost feel the quiet pride of doing it right. The whole point is to learn without taking. Of course, humans have not always been perfect at that. There's a messy history in wildlife research everywhere on Earth. Trial, error, unintended consequences, and the slow learning curve of realizing that the observer can change the observed. Penguins have been part of that learning curve too. You think of flipper bands, for example. Those metal or plastic bands once used widely to identify individuals over time. They did what humans wanted, gave a simple way to recognize a penguin year after year. But they could also create drag in water or irritate the bird. And over time, researchers began understanding that a small convenience for humans might carry a real cost for penguins. Science, at its best, adjusts when it learns better. It admits, quietly, that the penguin's comfort matters more than the human's neat data. So methods evolved. Today, identification and tracking often lean toward less disruptive tools. Tiny electronic tags can be implanted under the skin like a grain of rice, readable with a scanner when the penguin comes near. Some studies use temporary external devices, small GPS loggers, or time depth recorders attached to feathers with tape or glue that eventually falls off or is removed when the bird is recaptured. Some devices are designed to detach after a set period, so the penguin doesn't carry it forever. The tech can look like a tiny backpack or a little bump, and it's easy to feel conflicted watching it, a wild bird wearing human hardware. But the intention, when it's done ethically, is careful. The devices are kept as small and light as possible. The time attached is minimized. The attachment method is chosen to reduce harm. The whole process is wrapped in permits, guidelines, training, and the boring but necessary language of responsibility. You can almost picture a scientist holding their breath while attaching a tag, not because they're excited, but because they're trying to be fast and gentle. Hands steady, movements precise. The penguin grumbles like it has opinions about this whole situation, which it does, and the scientist accepts the judgment like a penalty for being curious. Then the bird is released, and it waddles away with the offended dignity of a creature that will absolutely remember this. That's another part of the odd beauty here. Penguins don't flatter humans by acting grateful. They tolerate you at best, which is honestly the healthiest relationship you can have with wildlife. A penguin is not your friend. It's not your pet. It's a life with its own agenda, and your job is to not get in the way of it. Even watching can be disruptive if done badly. If humans crowd too close, adults may leave nests, exposing eggs or chicks to cold and predators. If people move too fast or too loud, the colony's rhythm changes. Stress rises. Calls sharpen. The whole delicate system you've been listening to can tilt. So the better approach is soft. Keep distance. Move slowly. Stay low. Let the birds decide how close is tolerable. Follow the rules that exist for a reason, even if the reason is not as Instagrammable as the penguin itself. You imagine tourists on regulated visits, stepping carefully, guided by strict paths and timing, cameras held like quiet offerings. The best guides sound like they're narrating a museum where the artwork can walk away if you annoy it. They remind people to keep voices low, to avoid blocking paths penguins use, to never touch. They explain that the penguin's calm posture is not permission. It's a boundary. A penguin that looks fine might still be spending energy dealing with your presence. And then you imagine the scientists again, because they're a different kind of visitor. Their presence is longer, their questions deeper, their relationship with the colony built through seasons. They come back year after year, not to get one perfect shot, but to understand patterns that take time to reveal themselves. Why do some colonies grow while others shrink? How far do penguins travel to feed in different years? How does sea ice affect breeding success? How do chicks survive when storms arrive early? How does the ocean's food web shift when the climate shifts? Even asking those questions feels like standing at the edge of something bigger than you can fully hold. Penguins become messengers, not because they want to be, but because their lives are tied directly to the health of the Southern Ocean. They are living indicators. When penguins struggle, it can mean the sea's pantry is changing, the timing of ice is changing, the entire rhythm of the ecosystem is shifting. The scientists don't always feel like heroes in that. Sometimes they look like tired people in layers of clothing, trying to keep their fingers working, trying to keep instruments from freezing, trying to keep their own minds clear in weeks of white landscape. There's a quiet devotion in it that mirrors the penguin's own. The penguin stands on its feet with an egg beneath a warm fold. The scientists stand with a notebook beneath a gloved hand, recording the evidence of a world in motion. You think about the data itself, numbers, graphs, maps, and how strangely tender it can be when you remember what it represents. A dot on a chart might be a penguin's dive profile. How deep it went, how long it stayed down, how often it surfaced. That dot is a living animal's day. A line on a map might be a foraging route across the sea, stitched together from satellite signals. That line is a parent leaving and returning again and again, until a chick grows strong enough to join the ocean. And then there's the kind of science that doesn't touch the birds at all, which feels almost like the perfect compromise for a sleepy, respectful mind. Remote sensing, watching from afar. Cameras placed carefully at a distance. Drones used under strict rules were allowed, kept high enough and brief enough to avoid disturbance. Not flown like toys, but like tools with responsibility. Even those guano stains you noticed earlier can become a clue from far above, a way to locate colonies without marching across every coast and spooking every bird. It's a strange thing, realizing humans can learn from penguins without crowding them. We can read the landscape, read the ocean, read the patterns, and sometimes the most respectful form of curiosity is simply keeping space. Still, there's something endearing about the human urge to know, especially when it's paired with humility. You imagine a researcher lying awake in a tent while wind claws at the fabric, thinking about penguins outside, doing the exact same wind endurance with better coats and fewer complaints. You imagine that researcher hearing the colony's calls drifting through the night and feeling the same quiet awe you feel, that in all this cold emptiness, life has built a city of voices. And maybe that's the kindness at the center of good research. Not kindness as in sentimental affection, but kindness as in restraint. The choice to observe without demanding. The choice to gather knowledge without taking comfort away. The choice to adjust methods when evidence suggests the old ways cause harm. Kindness that looks like distance, patience, and letting the penguins remain penguins. You stand at the edge of the colony's world. Human footprints faint behind you, penguin paths clearer ahead. The birds keep moving through their routines, calling, feeding, resting, preening, building. They don't perform for you. They don't care about your curiosity. And somehow that makes your curiosity gentler. You don't need to own the moment. You can just witness it. The wind slides by again, and a few calls carry over the snow. Signature sounds that find the right ears. Somewhere out at sea, other penguins are diving through darkness with slow hearts and careful oxygen. Somewhere on land, a chick is pressing into the creche for warmth. And somewhere in the quiet distance of this same coastline, a scientist is probably standing very still, writing down what happened, trying to understand this magnificent life without bending it out of shape. Your own presence becomes smaller in the scene, not in a sad way, but in a peaceful way. Like realizing you don't have to be the main character to feel wonder. Penguins keep doing what they do. Humans keep trying to learn, hopefully with softer steps each time. And the night keeps holding all of it, Voices, waves, footprints, feathers together in one calm, cold, living world. The human footprints behind you look even fainter than before, half filled by blown snow, softened at the edges like the world is quietly erasing the evidence of your species. The colony doesn't care. It keeps singing, feeding, preening, shuffling, balancing its small miracles on feet and feathers, as if the only calendar that matters is wind, light, and the sea's slow decisions. Out beyond the waterline, the dark surface holds a pale sheen that wasn't there earlier, the kind of shimmer that hints the night is loosening its grip. It isn't morning yet. It's that in-between hour when the sky looks like it's considering change, and everything feels a little more honest. Penguins know this hour. They live inside cycles bigger than mood, bigger than schedules, bigger than whatever you promise yourself you'd start tomorrow. A few adults head toward the water with the same steady purpose you've watched all night. No last-minute drama, no lingering goodbyes, just bodies built for cold stepping into the ocean like it's a familiar hallway. Their calls carry behind them, thinner now because some of the colony is resting again and some of it is already working. The creche presses tighter for warmth, a soft gray center surrounded by watchful tuxedos. A chick peeps once, then settles, satisfied enough to be quiet. Everything you've seen depends on ice, not just the beautiful kind that makes the landscape look clean, but the working kind. Sea ice that forms and breaks and forms again, shaping routes, resting edges, feeding zones, safe timing. Ice that decides how far an adult must travel, how long a chick can stay sheltered, how exposed a nest becomes when meltwater shows up early, how stable the whole place feels when the floor keeps changing. You can imagine sea ice as a slow, white library floor that keeps rearranging its shelves. Sometimes it knits in a broad field that feels solid enough for a colony to trust. Sometimes it fractures into leads, dark cracks of open water, where the ocean breathes through and the birds choose their crossing points with careful feet. Sometimes it pulls back, leaving more open water close to shore, which can sound convenient until you remember convenience is a trick word in a harsh place. Open water can mean easier access to food, or it can mean storms have more room to build, waves have more room to punch, and the buffer that once softened weather is thinned. Penguins don't need graphs to notice when the rhythm shifts. Their bodies remember, seasons the way yours remembers a familiar room. When food is closer, the colony relaxes in tiny ways, shorter absences, softer urgency. When food shifts farther out, the tension shows up without shouting. Longer foraging trips, sharper calls, more deliberate movement. The kind of quiet pressure you feel in your chest before you even name it. They answer pressure with systems. You've already learned their layers. Feathers and oil, blood flow and posture, huddles and creches, voices and recognition. The future adds larger layers on top. Choices about where to feed, when to breed, which stretches of coast still feel safe enough to return to. The ocean can rearrange its pantry when currents shift and timing changes, and the smallest creatures, the krill clouds you pictured, can wobble with it. When krill drift, fish follow. When fish follow, penguins stretch their routes like a rubber band, and you can almost feel the strain in the colony's soundscape. A call held a little longer, a chick waiting a little longer, a parent arriving with just enough to keep going. Different penguins will face different versions of the challenge. Some species are tightly tied to sea ice, needing it as a platform and a promise. Others live on rocky coasts and temperate islands where the problem isn't always ice, but storms, heat, rain, and the long-distance search for dependable food. Some can shift their nesting sites by a valley or a coastline when conditions push them. Others are pinned to specific geography, like a favorite ledge that doesn't have a backup option. The future isn't one story. It's many coastlines, many currents, many small colonies making their own negotiations with the same planet. Even so, there's hope that doesn't feel like a slogan. It feels like pebble logic. One pebble doesn't make a nest, but enough pebbles, placed with care, lift an egg above the meltwater. Human help can work the same way, less performative, more consistent. Protected waters where feeding stays possible. Fisheries managed with restraint so the pantry doesn't get stripped at the edges. Less plastic drifting like a bad idea that never leaves. Visitors who keep distance real, voices low, paths respectful. Because a penguin's calm posture isn't an invitation, it's a boundary. You picture the scientists again, quiet guests with too many pockets, standing back, listening, measuring, learning without bending the colony out of shape. Their notes become one of the ways warning signs get noticed early, when there's still time to protect the places that matter. You imagine the way a single season of data can feel like a heartbeat, and a decade can feel like a whole song, and how those songs can tell humans what the sea is doing before the sea starts shouting. There's also a slower kind of help that doesn't show up in the colony at all, but still reaches it, the way ocean currents carry invisible messages. Less heat trapped in the air means less heat pushed into the sea. Less chaos in weather means more predictable timing. It's the kind of work that looks boring from the outside. Policies, energy choices, the dull grind of doing the responsible thing repeatedly. But penguins are basically the mascot of boring consistency. They survive by doing the same right things over and over, even when the wind is rude. On the beach, an adult waddles past a stained patch of snow and pauses, preening with that meditative patience, oil spread feather by feather like it's repainting its own protection. The gesture reminds you how penguins move through harshness, not by complaining, not by inventing weird hacks, not by smearing crocodile dung on anything, but by maintaining what works. Quiet habits done faithfully until the habit becomes a shield. A call rises from the colony, a single clear note that finds its answer, and the sound hangs in the cold air like a thread you could almost touch. The landscape feels immense again, the way it did when you first arrived under stars. Except the immensity feels warmer, because you've watched penguins fill emptiness with structure, turn distance into reunion, turn the ocean's hush into a steady supply line. The sky lightens by a shade. The stars thin like they're being gently swept away. The ocean looks less black and more deep blue, a color that feels like a secret being revealed at the pace it chooses. Farther out, a line of small shapes surfaces and dives in sequence, a soft rhythm traveling across the water. Breath glide, so smooth it barely disturbs the surface. Behind you, the colony softens into a lower hum. Chicks press into the creche, warmth traded in quiet contact. Adults stand close, bodies angled to block wind. The same communal geometry that has carried them through so many seasons. A pair near a pebble ring leans together in a way that looks like agreement. Not dramatic agreement. The simple kind, we're still here and this still works. Your thoughts stretch into longer, slower shapes, like a penguin's glide between strokes, and the world feels wide but not overwhelming. The colony continues behind you, patient and unbothered, and it becomes easy to believe that steadiness can be practiced, that calm can be built, that even a small body can hold warmth against a cold world if it keeps the right layers close. One last image stays with you as the light grows softer. A single penguin at the waterline, pausing the way they always do, listening to the sea, reading its mood, choosing the moment with quiet authority. It leans forward and slips into the water with barely a ripple, disappearing into that blue corridor like it belongs there completely, and for a while you don't need to follow, because the feeling of that smooth, silent entry is enough. The beach stays under your feet, the air stays clean in your lungs, the distant calls stay low and steady, and the world keeps turning at a pace that doesn't ask for your permission. Your body can rest inside that. Penguins will keep building pebble rings, keep swapping warmth in huddles, keep finding each other by voice, keep diving with slow hearts through the hush under the surface, and the thought of that quiet persistence becomes its own kind of comfort, soft and reliable like a blanket that doesn't slip off in the night.